have, as of the 25th, they would have followed the sun. And they haven't, because we already had the Ark of Aquarii anchored, which was the outer domain thing, and we already had the Anson Statia Passage anchored, which was anchored during the 12 Tribes 3 class, which is a March class. So they told us, we weren't going to do this in the 12 Tribes class. This was supposed to be done in 2047, or no, it was supposed to be done in Peru and then activated in 2047, but we need to do it now. So it ended up in the 12 Tribes 3 class. Well, now I see why, because if that passage hadn't been activated, we wouldn't be able to activate it now because our core gates would have compacted right along with the sun's. So we're in good shape comparatively. But it is a bit sobering to realize we've changed status, not just in a fall solar system anymore. No, now we're in a bardoing solar system. And there is a difference. Bardoing means prana seed is separating from seed atom, and core gates have closed, and there's only one way home at that point, and that is space dust return that happens at the end of a nova cycle. All right, but nova's not happening for a while, so we don't have to worry. 500 to 1,000 years is the estimate they have on the way things are looking in the grids at this point. So, fortunately, we have aurora zones. Unfortunately, we also have hibernation zones because of the nets. Now, if we look down here, can we pull this up, honey, please? Thank you. If we look down here, all right, let's look at the hibernation zones. These are hilarious. The names. I mean, it's like the whole New Age movement came out of these zones, I swear. Right? We got D1 hibernation zones. They were the etheric atomic, right, where they would look kind of like ghosty and not quite physical like we see physical here. The upper ones, we've got, and that's the one that like has the border at the ozone layer. We've got Oz, like the Wizard of Oz stories. This is what they were all about. They were actually, the guy channeled the stuff, probably not consciously knowing he was channeling, but the idea was given to him. He was narrating some of the things that happen and have to do with the ozone hibernation zone. And there's also the etheric Shasta here that connects into Mount Shasta. And that's kind of funny because if we go up and look at it, I don't know if I have it on this one, but it has to do with it's on the Rasha or the Shala line, I forget which, but on the other thing it shows it. But the Shasta came out of the actual band that it's running on, right? So as far as the name. I mean, some of these things, somebody up there has a sense of humor because they've been playing with us for a long time. We have lower D1 hibernation zone, subterranean Agartha, all right? False inner Earth, in other words. It's not inner Earth, but they call it that. Well, it's sort of in Earth, right? Where's the hibernation zone D1? I'd have to look up here again. I think that's this one here, right? Oh, yeah, I guess you could call it inner Earth, sort of. It's not what inner Earth is, but they created their own version. That's the D1 lower, right? So that is Agartha. The D1 upper that's where you've got Oz and Shasta and a few other things. These are just some of the names of the places that come from there. Just about every culture has stories that are connected to one or more of these zones. If you went to say some of the Oriental cultures, they would have stories. If you went to some of the Sanskrit cultures, they would have stories. And all of the stories and mythologies plug in to what's actually been going on in these zones. Sometimes they've told their history to us down here through them, but we've thought it was fiction. Right. We have D2 hibernation zones. These are the physical ones. All right. They're made of telluric matter. So they're telluric atomic, which means they are physical like we are. They're just at a different angular rotation of particle spin and at a different BPR frequency-wise. Upper, we got Olympus physical in the upper. Upper D2 is here. So in this zone, and that's where? That is in the gap space between the Van Allen belts. All right. You have lower. Here we go. And these were created first. They did a time warp thing that actually was able to take part of the planetary base here, put it on reverse spin, and suck it out of here and spin it up there. That was the start. And this started like 50,000 BC, I believe, is when, what was that? Lemuria went under, literally, under and up. And Atlantis went in, I think, who was the big one on there? Was that one 50,000? It's been ages since I looked at those. They're in Voyager's books of the Holocaust periods, right? During the Holocaust periods, this is when these places that used to exist physically on this Earth were flipped in to the lower D2 hibernation zone. They are physical. They still exist. This is where a lot of the Zetas hang out, as well as all sorts of other beings. Atlantis and Lemuria are still alive. I wouldn't say well, but they are alive in these spaces. This is where? Lower D2 hibernation zone upper, D2 hibernation zone lower. That would be right here in the outer half of the inner Van Allen belt. All right. I mean, these places are physical. This is just mind-blowing. And when they started giving me this man, I was like, oh my God, are you serious? You know, I went up into the sky going, are you serious? They're really up there? Oh my goodness. And they said, yeah. Right? And then I said, I'm going to have to teach this, aren't I? And they said, mm-hmm. I was afraid you'd say that. But it's also exciting because it's starting to put a lot of pieces together. You start to see where things actually fit, where this stuff is coming from, and where most of the New Age movement's being channeled from as well. Right. D3 hibernation zones. These are physical, but they're atomic physical. Different type of matter. It's not as dense as telluric matter is, nor is etheric matter as dense as telluric matter. So we're in the densest one here. D3 hibernation zones, we got a place called Tellus. That's a place that lots of people in the New Age movement get taken if they're really good. And they're really, really special, and they really do things like kiss up to Archangel Michael and a few other things. They will be taken to Tellus and a few other sacred places. Right? Yeah, good luck to you. Nothing personal, but I don't think I'll take a different tour. The lower D3 hibernation zone. I mean, you gotta laugh. It's so bizarre, but it's so true. I mean, the sophistication of this material, I couldn't invent this if I tried. You know what I mean? If I were a genius with a 5 billion IQ, I couldn't have come up with this story. I mean, they're in the sky. Yeah, I've been feeling like Chicken Little for a long time now. Right around going, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. You know, but you know, maybe it is. So we got lower D3 hibernation zone. This is where, and when we first came out with these, I wasn't sure who existed in which band. So they got a really rough sheet from, I think it was 12 Tribes 1 got that little handout, and it was like I think we had Shambhala down here. I'm not sure. We knew they were all there someplace, but we didn't know which ones were in which bands exactly. That's why we didn't want to publish any of this stuff until we were more certain on exactly who was on first, or on first, second, or third. Lower Shambhala, the false Eden. All right? Lots of people like to go there too. These are mental atmospheric cloud cities where they feel that they're like, when you get taken there, you feel like you're made of a less dense state of matter. And there are certain aurora platforms that are like that too, where you start to blend telluric with atomic or telluric with etheric. You start to feel less dense and actually more buoyant and feel more alive, actually. However, in the hibernation zones, they're made of the same different type of combinations of atomic energies, but they're on reverse spin. There's some very beautiful places in these places. They pride themselves in how lovely they keep their lands, some of them, particularly Shambalis. They're not real Shambhala people. They're not the people that when we read the Voyagers books that talked about the cloister races and the mixed cloisters and things where the Shambali were involved. These are not them, but they like the name. They have little bits of genetic descendancy connected to them, probably from bioregenesis that was attempted on their behalf, and they decided it was more fun to fall and spin on reverse in hibernation zones. Yeah. So we have Shambhala, false Eden is one of the things that comes out of there. There are whole lists, and I can't wait to get some of them, of names that go with who's up there, just so we know who we're dealing with. Because a lot of things that are being attributed, like say in the UFO movement, that are being attributed to coming from off-planet, may not be coming from off-planet at all. They may be coming directly from these hibernation zones. And, you know, literally downstepping, like the Zetas, change they shift their matter blend. They know how to do that, and they can physically manifest here and then vaporize right before your eyes. I've seen them do that. They used to abduct Katie. They used to come after her, and we had to protect her from that. The one that was in the one that raised this body. Her name was Katie, and we had to protect her all the time because the Zetas they'd appear out of nowhere, and they would do this thing to your field where you couldn't move biologically, where you couldn't move, you couldn't scream, you were like going, in your head, and you couldn't make any sound come out. And they could just take you and beam you up. They didn't even need to put a ship over you. They just blink you off, and you'd end up someplace else on a slab having medical experiments done to you. I mean, they were doing these things. And what was really funny is I got to a point once I was in body, they were coming after one of our children, because Katie had children, and they were kind of like our children together in that terms. They were part of the deal. Right? So they're my children too. But they were coming after one of my girls, and I caught them. And I literally watched the thing. I didn't know, because I was pretending I was asleep, and there's a way that you can calm your brainwave patterns where you actually read that you're asleep, and then underneath them, watch and stuff. This is how you deal with some of the ones who try to attack in the astral when you're sleeping, right? You have to calm a certain state. It works for putting babies to sleep too, by the way. If you want to get your baby to go to sleep, it helps to lay down with them and pull yourself right into that sleep state, but keep yourself awake underneath it, and then ever so gently slide away. Right? Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that. But with the Zetas, I've literally watched them do that thing where they would have tried to freeze frame me if they'd realized, and that's doing something with the bionet where they literally interrupt their motor abilities where you can't move. They didn't know they needed to do that because they thought I was asleep because I was doing the sleep read thing. And I could see it out of the corner of my eye, and I saw it go toward my daughter's bedroom. And there's a real funny way you have to move your muscles too, where it doesn't read, because they can pick up if you're in beta state consciousness, where if there's any chance that you can come at them or anything, they neutralize you before that. Well, I found a way under that little net, and I bounced out of the bed and dove into the room and said, "Get away from my daughter!" And the thing kind of went, and it freaked. It was scared to death, right? And it just went, and started vibrating really fast and got lighter and lighter. It was fully physical when I saw it. When it saw me seeing it, realizing it missed one, right? Like didn't neutralize me. It was terrified, and it de-manifested. It started oscillating. And you could start to see its molecules move until it got thinner and thinner like a ghost, and then went and disappeared. So it's like, this is how they do that. They have a way of shifting their molecules between the hibernation zones and our zone here. I guess from their perspective, we're a hibernation zone. We're each hibernating from each other, right? This will be when we start to go to aurora platforms or slide zones. We will change what our atoms are doing too by the frequencies we are running. All right, but we will be going to nice places as opposed to reverse spin places that have to do with black holes. All right, so we have these guys that are the hibernation zones and a whole bunch of other names that will fit into the D1, D2, or D3 levels. We also have the aurora zones, the aurora platforms, actually. They will be zones when they are fully activated together through the aqualene sun. And when they're activated through the aqualene sun, these aurora zones will open up as a full field that will create a 3D Earth system that's part Earth and part Eartha. And it will allow for 500 to 1,000 years of ascension through the hosted ascension of the Anastasia Passage, because it's the only place you can go at this point. What is even going to happen with the hibernation zones, I'm not sure. They haven't said, except for the fact that the nets are going to come down. Because with the activations of the planetary Rachelet, now first we're having indigo shield activations. That will not take down the planetary nets. What will start the planetary nets coming down is once the planet can do prana exchange again, once it can breathe, even on a respirator. And we're supposed to assist in the process of anchoring that so the planet can. At that point, the planet's Rachelet body will be able to trigger activation as long as we can hold the respirator line in, and the respirator line would be the Anastasia Passage. So we have the indigo shield activated, and it'll clear its nets and that kind of stuff, which will be like a healing for us. And that will allow Earth to, at a slower rate, clear its nets. So I don't think we'll get just like crash bang, they're all down, and here come all sorts of things falling out of the sky. I mean, what would this look like? I don't even know. I can't imagine what it would look like if the nets just came down, all of a sudden everybody spun back into the same place. Where would this plane physically be in relation to the other physical plane? The D2 parts, right? That like Olympus and stuff are up there? Yeah. Olympus, Atlantis, and Lemuria. I think all of a sudden we'd find ourselves in Atlantis. Maybe we'd be lower ground, and that would be higher ground. Maybe we would be flooded. Maybe we would be underwater when that wall came down. I don't know. So they will let us know more about these things. I'm sharing my own wonder at this with you, because I'm just learning it too. Oh boy, what a story this one is. I can't even imagine what it might look like, but I'm sure whatever the peaceful way to do it is, and the way that causes the least harm and has the most stability, will be what the beloveds ensure takes place with our help. Because at this point, we're the ground team. And I appreciate you guys still listening to us and still coming, because it's much bigger than I think any of us ever realized. I'm still a little bit like deer in the headlights, like, oh, God, oh, my God. Yeah, it's getting real close here. They wouldn't be teaching this stuff unless something big was soon. And I don't know what big or what soon, but I do know they said that spring of 2008 will be when the first pulse comes, the first gamma pulse. They call them ring pulses, and it's probably because they have to do with the rings of the Rochelet body. The first ring pulse is released from the sun in spring of 2008. Now, we will already have the aqualene sun transmutation field up around that. So whether or not we will see anything, I don't know, but I get a feeling we might. I don't think it will be huge, but it might be something strange starting with the sun, and that wouldn't be normal in the solar cycle period or whatever, something like that. Maybe I'm just being an optimist. I don't know, but we're not going to get fried in the beginning of 2008, but that is when the pulsing begins, and progressively every year there will be a pulse. A gamma burst is what they're calling them. And it's like a multidimensional gamma burst. It's not, I don't know what spectrum it fits into on the science spectrum that they're looking at here. But eventually it's going to affect things. It's going to affect electricals. It's going to affect satellites and those kind of things. And they'll keep us abreast of what to do next. But they're preparing us now. What we're doing now, what we're going to be doing at the end of this, is beginning the activations in the indigo shield and in our own bodies of the aqualene sun. So by the time that burst is released, even if some of it still gets through the transmutation field of the aqualene sun that will be around Sala at that point, even if it still gets through, we will still be able to hold on the planet a decent transmutation screen. So it will at least, let's say, kind of like fortifying the ozone layer, but from this side of it instead of from the hibernation zone area, where we will be able to help buffer not only for ourselves, but for the planet. By holding it in the group shield, we will be able to create a local transmutation screen of aqualene sun that will take those gamma bursts and transmute them, which just means neutralize them. It will absorb them and turn them into things that are no longer harmful forms of radiation. So I don't know what it's going to look like, as usual. I've been saying that for 6 years now, and I get answers to certain things, but the big thing is, when we get out of here, what is it going to look like? Right? When we finally have such a shift that there's no doubt about it, that was not just mental and emotional. No, the body definitely is not where it used to be. Yeah. That's what I wonder. What is that point going to look like? But we have these points to get through first. We've got aurora zones. The A1 aurora zone. It's actually a combination of D1 and D2, as we'll see on one of the other graphs. But they call it the A1, referring to it's primarily a D1 etheric, but it's etheric atomic. So it means it's etheric mixed with telluric. All right. So you get less dense than here, but not as super less dense as etheric matter would be. So it would be a stage between etheric matter and telluric matter. All right. So the A1 platform is at D3 6.5, which is D2, 8.5, which is the D2 Shalon shield between the upper and middle mantles of Earth. So A1 would be here. Now here's our surface Earth. All right. So this is between the upper and the middle mantles of Earth, and that is where D2 Shalon shield is. Remember, we talked about the Alon, Shalon, and Kalon crystal sets, and of course the O's on the ends way out there at the orons. All right. So we'll find that on the other thing that all of these correspond to one or another Shalon, Alon, or Kalon field, which means they connect to the prana phasing, the prana exchange process. It has to do with phasing of the lons, as they say. All right. We'll see that in a little bit. So A1 is here. All right, we have our Earth's surface here. This is where the hibernation zone of the D1 lower is, and it's underneath that. And these are the platforms that we project to, and when we use the maps and certain right turns, left turns, ups, downs, those kind of things. They're getting us into these zones because each turn we make is a mathematical coordinate in terms of the Rochelet bodies. And that has to do with here, too. Just like you can make a three-dimensional image on a computer by using a complete math formula and then telling the computer to do whatever it does to make that math look like the picture, right? Or you can take pixelation, that kind of thing. It has to do with this. As far as we're going on journeys that are very, very real journeys. That's what it looks like, just like when you walk to the store here. It's a very real journey. But that whole thing is actually an experience of pixelation and projection, just like when you're watching images on a television that look 3D, but it's even more intense than that, or computer images. So we're living in a hologram. Yeah, we've said that for a long time. We have the D2 one, and this one is telluric. All right, D2 Aurora platform is telluric, which means it's solid like this one. It corresponds to D3 8.5, which is the D3 Shalon shield, which equals D2 Shara 10.5. All right, so that place is where? That place is here. Now, here is the ozone layer, right? This would have been our natural D2 raw field. So it's at the top of our natural D2 raw field. It's on the top of the D1 upper hibernation zone, I think that is. Yeah, D1 upper hibernation zone. It's on top of that. And before you get to the inner part of the inner Van Allen belt, before you get into the inner Van Allen belt. And I believe that would be right where the thermosphere is. So this is actually located in what science calls the thermosphere in our atmosphere. Right, that's the Aurora 2. Aurora 3 is the D3 Aurora. It's D3 10.5, which is the same thing as Eartha D1 Shalon Shield 8.5. All right, and it's also the same place as D2 Kala 12.5, and that place is here. It's between the end of the inner Van Allen belt and the gap zone, but it's not all the way fully into the gap zone. It's just right in between those areas. Right. Then we have Aurora 4, which is the D3 12.5 or D2 14.5. Location is way out here. All right. This is toward the outer end of the outer Van Allen belt and then up a bit from there. And that corresponds with here, which is the, this is the D8 middle, this is 7.5, I believe. That would be, I have it all worked out on the other chart. So it corresponds to, this comes in right under its center point of that A4 zone, or the Aurora 4 zone, would be where the Adashi temples start, or the Eartha D2 Adashi temples, and they would be at 8, and this would be 7, so this would be 7.5, I believe. All right. So it's showing in our atmosphere now. Where is that in relation to this? That's just, and these temples are just outside of the outer Van Allen belt. The magnetosphere, right, that's outside our planet, surrounding our planet, that lovely magnetosphere that we work with, and sometimes we would have to do things at night and get transmissions in at night because of the magnetotail, because it actually reached further up where there was more of a line that they could reach from Eartha to send frequency down through the magnetotail. So we'd end up having to do transmissions at night a lot. We still do, if you haven't noticed. You think about it with the magnetotail of the magnetosphere of Earth. It's facing away from the sun, and where that is the night side. All right, that whatever the planet is rotating, but whatever side it is night means the magnetotail on that side is like that you're facing away from the sun. If you're facing away from the sun, fine. If you go up into the Rachel bodies, it means there's a tail that's sticking out further into the Eartha Rachel body. So it makes it easier for certain transmissions to be run at night because they can follow that tail instead of trying to come through the solar side, where the solar wind is blowing that frequency this way, and it's blowing it away from the night side. The dark side will always have the tail. So they use the magnetotail, and that's why, unfortunately, we do have to stay up late sometimes just to get the proper information or frequency in. So we have the Aurora 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have the Van Allens here, and the gap between the Van Allens there. So we have got a map to our skies, our local skies. Right? It's like they're worrying about looking for life on other planets. They should look for other life on this planet because there is. All right. So this is there anything here we need? Oh, yeah. Okay. This here talks about the nets a little bit. See, this is one of the ones that I wanted to give you a copy of, but these were so bad that you couldn't read anything. And it was just like not worth getting, 220 of them made for people not to be able to read them. So at some point we'll have them out where they're much better, but it does show you the maps. We did give you the one that is the vertical on it, so you do have the breakouts of them in a way that came out clear enough where I hope it came out clear enough where it's readable. It did, didn't it? I hope so, okay. And when we're talking about the nets, the D1 Dermanet, which is the one that runs here, this little tubey-shaped thing with spikes on it, right? And that would run that whole band here. Remember, the nets are what split the light field and cause the hibernation zones above and below, right? So the D1 Dermanet is the etheric atomic inner sheath DNA template block. It's in the D2 Rakan 9.5 equals D1 Shala 11.5 equals the physical crust of our Earth, our D2 crust, okay? It splits the D2 Ra-10 and D2 Ka and Ka9 mantle and forms the D1H zones and ozone layer. All right. Now let's see. Let me see what some of the surface crust. What is that word? Core. Oh, I was just noting where the cores were and that kind of stuff, so I could get the alignments right. Was most of what that was about. I'm not going to read the tiny print. It's not that important. But the upper, this one, if anybody's wondering where the ozone is, it's in the upper stratosphere area. So that's a direct part. That's caused by the ozone layer is an unnatural layer that creates a biosphere that's actually conducive to carbon-based life with reverse templates. That was not done by accident. That was done when they were trying to harness these fields as well, the Leviathan races, as they interbred more with more fallen angelic things and lost more of their Chris coding, where the environment here, if it were a Christic planet, would become toxic to them. There's going to be a point where something like that does occur. And if there's time, I'll talk about a little bit of the history. They're just giving me about something that was called the first stand of Aurora. And it had to do with a period in time when something so terrible was happening on this planet. It was before seeding one of the angelic humans on Earth. But there was a period where something so horrible was happening that the Aurora races just briefly opened the core gates. And what it did was create a condition where the artificial environment that had been beamed in here and was being run here by threshold mechanics that were already they had been put here by a group called the Thetans that were working with the Borgia. They actually opened the core gates just long enough for it to transmute the artificial biomes. And what that did was made the environment toxic for them. And they left. They didn't die. They left because they couldn't stay. Because the frequencies, the natural crystal frequencies, were allowed to run again, and the natural radio body structure and part of the coronosphere was coming back again. The Earth was healing. We're now moving into something, and I'm not sure what that one's going to look like, but they said there were many middle stands, but we are now in the last stand of Aurora, and that is what this mission particularly is. And the first stand was 75 million years ago. And that was when the Thetans left this planet because they had taken it over when it was supposed to be a Mente host planet. And they set up civilizations and their corporation, as they like to call it, and were running the place into the ground. They were using the time rip technology from the Borgia. They were being buddies with the Borgia at the time. And they had anchored something from parallel Earth. They'd already done it to parallel Earth. They'd wiped out angelic human seeding 1 from parallel Earth. And that's why there's such a huge gap. Parallel Earth was seeded 250 million years ago. Earth, angelic humans weren't seeded till 25 million years ago. That's an awful big span between seedings. And this was why. Because the angelic humans from parallel Earth, their first seeding, were wiped out by the Thetans and the Borgia who came in. They plugged in the time rip technology from the Borgia matrix and the Wiesedraht matrix. They recreated something called the Mica complex, which was a threshold towers complex that ran energy directly from the Borgia matrix through the time rip technology and allowed them to force in reverse the core gates of parallel Earth and to continually drain energy off its seed atom. So they had free energy. They had all sorts of free energy technologies that they could use as they were killing the planet, basically. They broke through. When they broke through, Again, they blew a cap off the EUMB time rip, and they got back into, from parallel Earth, into this Earth system, because it was an easy link, because this Earth system was already, well, it was a hosting system already. It had some damage to its grids already from things that happened in the fall, but it was hosting. They came in here, used the technologies they had, and they created something, a companion to the mica complex. It was called the mica complex, MICCA, because it had to do with the substance mica and microchips and those kind of things, that kind of technology. And they created its counterpart here, and the idea was to link them together. And that place was called the Mecca complex. Yeah. I feel bad for a lot of people who don't realize what has been done to the grids that were sacred to them. But the Mecca complex plugs into the mica complex. Parallel Earth fell in 2003 into the Wiesadrak matrix. So now that matrix is being controlled by the same people that 75 million years ago the beloveds from Eartha had to open the gates to make them leave, because they were going to take out Eartha through the Mecca mica complex and then go after Sala, because they were trying to get the entire system, even way back then. The way the first stand of Aurora worked was they simply opened the gates. See, they always say Christic races don't fight, they just stand. They can fight if they have to, but they prefer not to. But when you stand and simply hold frequency that is your right to hold, and it is Christic frequency, and you're not using nasty technologies to cause harm to anybody. And if somebody who's doing stuff they shouldn't be doing with the natural energies and perverting them get hurt because of what they are doing, that is not your fault, and you are considered blameless. And that is how the Christ beings look at it. So they opened the core gates because they had to stop the Mecca mica complex, because it was going to take out Eartha. Now, what it did was not kill anybody, but it would have if they tried to stay, and they knew it. So what they did was pack up and leave. Now, they weren't able to take the one over. They caused it damaged it somewhat, but it didn't change what happened over on parallel. It only fixed it over here temporarily. It allowed them to put a cap on the Mecca complex 75 million years ago. All right, this is way before any of the Islamic teachings or anything were here. So this word in this place that is still that place, that place is where that set of technologies were put in 75 million years ago. And they were capped from then, but once they were put in, they couldn't be taken back out, because if they were taken out, the planet would explode. All right, it would have novaed. So they were capped, and there's been fights over the other guys running the negative agendas, trying to open them and get them back. These were the threshold grids, and it was a big hurrah during the Atlantean periods when they finally got to plug them into the Metatronic grids and make the Golden Serpent, which was putting the two technologies together to create a mega technology that had black hole capacity and time rip capacity and wormhole capacity, which was bigger than both of them combined. So anyway, 75 million years ago, we had the first stand of Aurora, where they opened the core gates. And the core gates weren't fully compromised yet. They were partly compromised. All right? We're in the same situation now. We have two core gates that were fully compromised in two different periods in history, but by 9562 BC, both the Urta and Ruta, which are the 14 and 15 gates respectively, were completely reversed, but they were not activated. Activating fully activated, where they started beaming frequency, because it would have taken the rest of the grids here and completely put them in reverse order, and it would have dragged all of us into the hibernation zones, as opposed to let down the nets. Right. That doesn't sound like much fun. So what has happened at this point is similar to what happened in the first stand of Aurora. In the first stand of Aurora, there was a core reclamation done on the cores of the two gates, which are always the lower ones. They never go over the strongest one. 13 is actually the strongest one. And then the next will be 14, and the weakest is 15. They usually go for 15 first when they're trying to take one of them out. And that's what they did with Ruta. They took Ruta 15 first, and that was 15,400 BC in the last round. But in the first stand of Aurora, 75 million years ago, what the Christic races did of Earth, or what the Aquari races did, was they opened the core gates here. First they opened Shala 13 that hadn't been corrupted yet, same as the situation here. And then they used that they gave them a warning. they gave them a stand-down order, just like they did this time on March 15th, 2007. They did that 75 million years ago as well. And they did the same thing then, which is basically told the krystar races to stick it. And it's like, okay. And they tried to activate the Micro-Mecha complex fully, and that's what they were trying to do again this time, except this time, parallel Earth is already down in Weisse-Drac fall. It fell in 2003 during the Hitharo period. The parallel Earth is in Weisse-Drac black hole. They tried to do that in order to pull this whole system down into that black hole, including Eartha, not just Earth, right? So they were given a stand-down order. They told us to forget it again, and their beloveds had warned them that, well, fine, we're going to do it again. We're going to open the core gates. We will do a reclamation. They didn't think at this point, because there's so much damage to this planet, they did not think those core gates would be able to undergo a core reclamation, which means their 1, 2, 3 levels are first reclaimed and put back on the proper spin, right? Then the next would be the 4, 5, 6 levels, the liquid cores. But the solid cores have been reclaimed as of I think it was the 23rd and 4th, right before the solar gates finally compacted. They couldn't save the solar ones, but they saved the ones here. So we're doing the last stand of the auroras, just like 75 million years ago it was. And I wouldn't doubt something interesting is going to happen. As far as those who have come here, even under human masks, where there's a lot of people running around in the Homo sapiens sapien mutation form, that is a great mask for all sorts of beings to live in. Some of them will find they are Christic beings, and it will bring the Homo sapiens sapien back to its original angelic human glory. And others will find that the frequencies that are going to be on this planet from the aqualene sun, even if we didn't anchor it, they're coming. They're coming whether we do anything or not. If we help anchor them, it will be stable, and we will not see all sorts of crazy things with weather and well, not as much as we would if we didn't anchor this. But there are some races that are here, and the hibernation zone races, many of which are not from these places at all, will begin to have the same experience the Thetans had in 75 million years ago. And that is, they will find if they don't leave, the environment will become toxic to them, and they will leave. And they have an opportunity to do that. They can go to Weisse-Drac matrix, they can go through any one of the holes they've already made while they're still there. So, they're right. They have plenty of places they can go, right? And some of them, if they ever wanted to, they could probably do a host bioregenesis, but most of them don't want one. That's the problem. And it's always been the problem. You can't fix something that doesn't want to be fixed, right? I think we finally learned that. Yeah. Well, what stage was that in the VV game? That's right before you get flattened, right? The fixer. I'll fix it all. I'll fix it. All right. D2 Internet, D3 EgoNet. We've talked enough about these. I want to get to the last few. Yeah, I know, because I know you guys are tired. I am too. And it's scary because when I'm tired, I just keep going and going. This is just to remind you of when we did the vertical maps, they started like this, where you had a circular map over here, right? And we marked off all the little lines going up that represented where those circles hit the center line. And then we took those lines vertical over, pulled it out for the D1, D2, D3, D4, actually not D4, D3, and density level, which is also Eartha D1, then Eartha D2. And then when you put them all together, you get the vertical maps of everything between here and surface Eartha. All right. These were the first ones. These are, I have to work on these a lot more. They're very, very detailed. But we have a simplified version that shows you the things you need to know most. Next one, please. This is when we took those and blew them up a bit because you couldn't even tell. Yeah, thank you. That's cute on the sides. Like, oh, let's try it that way. Yeah. I wonder if they'll have us do that at any point. I just got a feeling of going down them horizontally. What is that about? You did that too. I think that something happened. Something came through you to have that there, because that's, I don't know what that's about. It's not right now though. I know. And I saw something. I saw it go three-dimensional when you did it. Anyway, this was, something's to that. I don't know what it is, so we put in file 13 until we get more information on it. Right? So here is from Earth core all the way up to surface. Eartha would be up here. So we took this and just blew up this part. This goes to here. All right, so this part here is this. Right? just so you could see some of the detail. We've got crystal beds here. These crystal beds, that if you find us, if we can find us, if I can find us on here, I believe we are here. This is surface Earth level here. This is our Raka crust, right? So this is our middle mantle, and I believe middle and upper mantle crystals, right? There are crystal beds, huge selenite crystals and things from there. What we find that they are the the D2 level of the Nada 1 layer crystals, the core crystal of Eartha. It's actually physical crystal, the D2 level. It's in our mantle. It's in our upper mantle. And there's already pictures of these on the internet. They're starting to find them. And these are only the most surface, the ones that are closest to the surface. They go down. There's all sorts of biomes that happen on the subterranean levels. It's broken out better on the handout that you got, and I'll show you those in a minute. But that's what these crystals are. What becomes fascinating is you find the same thing occurring when you get to Eartha, D2 Eartha, physical Eartha, and you find Eartha's D2 crust, and you go and look in the upper and middle mantles of Eartha, and you find Adashi temples and things. You also find the crystal layer from the next set up, which is the Cirrus B crystal sets. D2 Cirrus B are running through Eartha's level on this. So if this was Eartha's surface crust, those crystals in the same position up there would be from Cirrus B. So they're the Syrian temples, the Adashi temples are connected to the Cirrus B gates and those kind of things, which is nice. That's the one the ones that the Jeshua lines all came out of, the real Jeshua lines, Jeshua 12 lines. The Maji, the Maharaji, all the Krishtik races came down through the Amaraya passage. They're the ones that lead. That's even now. There's the ones that lead up to Andromeda. They connect up into Andromeda and into the Andromeda galaxy, which is how to get out of this matrix, basically. It's the fastest way to get out of this matrix if it was going to fall. All the things from Voyagers when we first published it, with the sphere of Amente, and all of that has to do with that. So anyway, let's go to the next one, please. I'll get on with so we can do this activation. I think that's what everybody's suffering to stay awake for, bless them. Some are, some aren't. I don't mean to do that to people, but I don't control the timing on these. I've tried this. And this is what I wanted you to be able to have, and the beloveds wanted to be able to have, to take home with you. So, because to remember everything that you were told, and the most important thing is what's up where in that map, right? It's going to be a while before we have an official published version of it, and we needed to understand where things were and also where they fit with certain things. Here you will find the vertical map with the most important things on it. In between these little squares, you'll find the aurora platforms, all right? The squares over to this side, over to the left when you're looking at it, side, all right? These represent what's in those zones, those Aurora 4 zones. All right? Now, these are ocean cities on the Aurora 3 platform. They're actually, some of them are underwater. Some of them are a bit above water. But these are mostly fully underwater because they run through the D2 level aquifers of Eartha. All right? So they appear to be underwater when you go there. All right? These, and the Aurora 2 platform that is in the thermosphere, all right, when we are, where our science tells us, in the thermosphere, these are physical. They're the D2 cloud cities, and these are the good cloud cities. There's a whole bunch of cloud cities that go with these hibernation zones that you do not want to stumble into. All right, that's where you have cupids with arrows that aren't filled with love, all right, sitting on clouds, floating around, just waiting. No, I'm kidding about that part. All right, but they are cloud cities. The cupid parts I was kidding about. All right, yeah. But this is where we have the hibernation zone. So you can see on this a lot clearer. You can go, I don't have every one of the markings made, only the ones that are most important. Because to try to put everything on, like with those other maps, you end up where you can't even read what the little letters are. At some point I'll do micro typesetting or something and get them set. But for now, this is the most functional version of this map that is out there, and it's pretty darn accurate. There's probably a few things I'll still have to tweak, but it's accurate enough to hold what it needs to hold, which is show you the projection journey. And I have a feeling they're going to show us how to do something horizontally. What? Yeah, I keep getting them horizontal. They're going to have us put those graphs that way, aren't they? I don't know what this is about. But you can use these at home to, right, like you can even color them if you want to. Water, and that's earth, and that's pretty crystals. To give you a little bit more, that if you're going to use them as a visual journey, they are a visual meditation journey. Imagine what they're like. You've got a rough sketch of the lay of the land, right? Take it from there and see what you can find. All right, there's something that they're going to do tonight that will make it so you can safely do that without tripping into these zones. Because if you notice, the lovely crystal beds here have the hibernation zone running through these guys. You don't want to visit those right now. That's the D1 lower hibernation zone. So I'm not going to read all of these bits to you because I actually explained it to you on the circular maps already where those zones were and all. But what you're seeing is the horizontal translation of the circles. All right, it's the vertical map, and you're seeing those bands like where they would come out. Right, this would be the band the sphere that would have held the net field, and this is the above and below of the net field, right, of the hibernation zones created from it. That's the D1 net. There's the D2 net. See, it's like a tube, right? It's like a choppy-looking tube with spikes on it. There's the D2 choppy-looking tube with spikes on it. It runs right here, right? It tells you where that is, like in the Van Allen gap, right? D2 intranet. It tells you it's a chemical DNA band. Then down below it is a hibernation zone. That's hibernation zone, D2, hibernation zone, lower. It's a telluric, atomic, physical. It's in the inner Van Allen proton field. This is where Atlantis and Lemurian time warps, which means where Lumantis, new place, Lumantis, right? Atlantis and Lemuria. I don't know why I think that's funny too. I think there may be a place. Maybe they blended them into one. I don't know. Lumantis. Or Amiria. I don't know. Anyway, this is where Atlantis and Lemuria actually are physically. They're telluric atomic. So these are physical, just like this is physical. So they're telluric. Right? Now, where are they in relation to where we are? Where are we? Let's find us. Right? Now, these are aurora zones. So we are where? D2 here. We are down here. This is our crust right here. Okay? This is where the D1 net is running and creating the D1 upper hibernation zone there and the D1 lower hibernation zone down below in our beautiful crystal beds. Right? They're those crystals that they're finding. They're seeing the tops of right now, the top layers of them. If they were able to dig down into the lower part of the upper mantle. I don't know how many feet we're talking about here either, or like miles, let's say. How many miles down? Eventually we'll know how many miles down what are and where those things are. But it's below the crust. We know that, and we know that on the internet you can find stuff at least about Chihuahua, Mexico, where they found selenite crystal caverns. All right, they are one example of many, many others like that are part of these crystal beds that are actually the D2 level nada core crystals of Eartha, because the core crystal is that big. All right, that our mantle is actually made of part of their core crystal. So this, you can read it for yourself, and you can just see if you understand that these are just, you could take this and bend it into a circle, every one of these lines. It's just pulling them out straight so you can see what is running through that. So this is where you get your verticals going up. So you can see aquifers, you can see aquifer doors. An interesting thing, that's the word, happens. I'm so tired, I'm tripping over my lips. At the 6.5 level, in any of the dimensions, at 6.5, which is between the Jada 6 layer and the Ta 7 layer. Jada 6 is the highest, the top layer of the aquifers, and the Ta 7 is the lowest layer of the mantle. So between the mantle and the liquid, top part of the liquid core, you will always find a set of gates at 6.5. And this is the D1 8.5 Shalon shield, actually. But there are a set of gates in that layer, and no matter which level of the Cathara grid you're looking at. Now, the ones we're looking at here that fall here in relation to our physical crust here, right? There's our physical crust here. There's our ozone layer, right? So this is where we are. All the way down here, there are physical caverns that are in stone, that are in the Ta 7 lower mantle layer, that are doorways that go down through the waters and go down through into the cores that have where the prana seed is. Inside the prana seed, remember the prana seed is inside of the nada one core crystal? The prana seed has at its core the Iran point, which is a doorway. All right, the Iran point in the center of a planet is the doorway between the outer prana seed and the seed atom of the planet. But they're also doorways to jump. Okay, they are doorways to slide or glide or span. And these are doorways that we go when we go down to the core, to the core of Eartha. We are going into and accessing these doorways. These doorways have been the full doorways have been jammed for a long time because the prana seed of Earth has not been able to phase because of the reversal of Urta and Ruta. The cores of those have been turned back around now so it can phase, which means the Iran point can open. It also means the Iran point can open inside of our atoms, because our atoms can now start experiencing prana exchange, which I'll explain in a minute. That's why I don't want to go through every little detail here. I could spend 3 hours on this graph alone, explaining all sorts of things. There's enough where you can read it and just read what the lines say over in relation to that area. Eventually, you will. There will be the circular ones that go with it, so you can find these coordinates right on those circular maps and that kind of thing, because it's all totally plugged into that. But meanwhile, it gives you a decent idea of what you're going through when you go up vertically. It also showed us something, and they wanted us to see this here. In relation to that, we have, this is from Earth core all the way up to Eartha surface, D2 Eartha surface, right? Physical Eartha and physical Earth, and the core where they're united. These are the aurora zones that come off here, right? So we see the little arrow going in, and the A1 is aurora zone 1, aurora zone 2, the cloud cities, aurora zone 3, the ocean cities, the underwater cities, and the aurora platform 4. This one's fascinating. Let's see if I can describe this to myself even. This one has a hibernation zone, H zone 3 upper, running through it, and I forget what that one was called. What was that one called? I don't know, I have it somewhere. I forgot to mark it there because I was in a hurry, because we were late enough as it was. But the D3 hibernation zone upper runs through here, but they only partially. They have a set of frequencies that runs through also on the Adashi spin that allows for a passage to be created. So there's a passageway through this hibernation zone, and there's a passageway through that net. All right, when they open it from the top, when they open the seals and allow it to open. They call this area up in here, that if you keep going up the vertical maps, you go through the water, well, you're going to go up this way, you're going to skip the hibernation zones, so you'll be going up, this would be here, you would go down from Earth, let's say down to the core, because you have to, I think, go through the core to access and come back up to 1, and then you'd be able to do the platforms, right, this way, to do the ascent. So these all connect to there. You would go from the core, or the surface of Earth, down to the core, over to here, which are the Aurora 1 platforms, and here you will see it's physical etheric, that's telluric etheric, so it's a little bit less dense than here. You go through these, and some of these are underground biomes. Some of them these are the places, and I've seen them so many times, I can never figure out exactly where they were. They used to have some of them on Eka inner Earth, but these were different. And they look like lagoons, like an ocean with a lagoon and then like mountains coming up around it, like something like you might see in Hawaii, that kind of effect. Right? I don't know if they're connected to Hawaii. They haven't said that yet or not. But this particular one, these connect to. They'll show you what they connect to as the main access sites. We'll get to that later. But first, in your vertical journey, you're going to go from Earth down into the core through the prana gate. Once you can phase, you'll be able to get through the Iram point on the Eartha level, right? Then you'll go up through these areas. I always end up popping up, going in through these type of things and popping up through swimming underwater gates, like through these underwater, and ending up in a lagoon in a really nice place. And they have all sorts of meetings there and all sorts of things. Yeah, right? And, there's like a surface level of that too, even though it appears to be underground. I mean, these things are fantastic, the type of places that manifest in these spaces. The next place you would go to, and I'm not sure what set of doors you'd take, but they let you know from there, right? You go up this way, excuse me, eventually these will all be linked together once the aqua sun fields fully activate. But we have next one. These are the cloud cities where they would appear to be in the air. There would be physical cities in the clouds. This is where you get the cloud walker stands from. There were times, in fact, my beloved there was known as the Great Golden Cloud Walker because many of the 12 Feathers tribes from the old days, the ones that were on bioregenesis and things like that, or the angelic humans on bioregenesis, used to see him and others like him take people and walk up into the air and up into the clouds and disappear. And they became known as the cloud walkers. And so these are the places that you want to walk to the clouds to, and the places you don't want to walk to the clouds to have to do with somewhere over here you'll find it. One of the these guys, all right, the Oz and Shasta, all right, these also have cloud zones, and they're not good ones. So you don't have to worry about those as long as you take the path going this way. And this is what the exercise, the technique you did today will give you the mathematical coordinates for this access, where it will direct your Rashale through this sequence. And as you activate more and more Rashale, you'll be able to go higher and higher in the thing. Now, we start there, you go into the cloud cities next. After that, you would actually go through another set of gates. I'm not exactly sure where they are, but you pop up through, and you end up in underwater cities. And this is where you can breathe water and air. All right. Now, if you're of a person who can't yet breathe water and air, they have protection zones, protected zones that you can come up in whatever is the natural kind of air for the planet you're on. Because these guys help all sorts of beings for all different places, not just from Earth. They've been hosting things from our system, like coming down from our system for quite a while now, and for many, many eons before that. Oh, starting to get microphone elbow. It's like tennis elbow, but different. Ouch. So there you would have the underwater cities, and there's the movie The Abyss is the closest thing to hinting at this in fiction that I've ever seen. Where The Abyss, that one. Where I found most of it pretty boring until the guy got lost down in this big abyss crack down in the ocean floor. They were in a submarine, and they all thought he was going to die and be gone in the whole bit. And at the end of it, it was worth suffering through the rest of it. If you don't like submarines and stuff like that, it gets a bit boring watching the drama. But there were these most amazing creatures that came, and they're the closest thing I've seen that resemble the Aurora race, a particular line of the Aurora races. They remind me of the ones that they refer to as the blue dragons, which aren't dragons at all. They're aqua birds. They're underwater birds, except they don't have feathers. They have cape-like wings. And the things that they designed as the friendly, loving ETs from down under in that movie were the closest thing to these to the actual biologies of the Aurora blues, or the bendy blues, as I call them, that I've seen. And they're actually the blues, the bendy blues, are more human looking. They have more hominid shape than the ones you'd see in the movie. But it's worth renting the video just to see what the experience of. And they took them into these places where there was even though they breathed water and lived in water, they had places where they could pull the water out and airlock it. So if someone came down, and everybody up in the sub thought the guy was dead and was going to die, and the whole bit, and he didn't. They saved him, and then they brought them up. They came up with this massive ship up to the surface, up to the top of the ocean, to say hi to everyone. And it was that ending. It's like the last maybe 25 minutes of the movie make it worth the whole thing, just to see that. Because I'm hoping someday that big purple submarine does indeed come up. Forget the yellow one. I want to see that purple one from the movie. Here's a purple submarine that they used as the ship to come up from the abyss and to visit up on surface and let everybody know friendly company was there, and had been there longer than we had been, I think, as far as Earth people. Right. Anyway, the closest thing to those was that movie that I have seen. And they didn't give you a lot of landscape. They just gave you, the basic concept and a look at what the races might be like. And that was very, very touching, I thought. But we'll go up here, and then the next place, you end up in a place called, as you're going up here, this is a bypass station. And this is where you start getting interfaces, first of all, to get to the Adashi Temple passages. There's also interfaces here where you can go into Cirrus B. Because these crystals here that are in the the upper mantle of Eartha D2, right? That's the Con 9 level of Eartha D2, and there's Eartha D2's surface, right? It's Raka, right? These crystals are the D2 level of the Cirrus B USG6 in density 2, not a level 1 core. All right, the D2, but level 1 in the Gelesic templates, right? So this is the Cirrus B connection. This is the connection of moving out of the system, but in a secured zone, because all of these plug into this, which is the Ensign Statia passage line. It comes down, it goes over through the, from the hubs, actually it comes through the hubs here, and it meets with the Crystal River arc that's coming over from the outer domains of the aqueous matrix. And it actually is like a loop. So it circles through the hubs, comes back up, and then the outer one comes this way, and it literally makes a circulation of energy. But all of these things plug into this. And once you get up to Eartha, the next place you would ascend up to leave the system and go on to higher things, would be through Cirrus B, and then you would go through the Andromeda galaxy. You'd literally find yourself out in that other galaxy that's not a part, we're not a part of it anymore. That was the original Andromeda galaxy that we were a part of before certain things fell. You would find yourself out there in the Christic domains in the area called the Aquinos area, which they used to call them the nurseries. I think they seeded a race of Aquafarian there, actually, a long time ago. And then from there, you could go to whichever matrix you wanted as far as your home matrices and that thing. People who were from Aquarii could cross all the way over back to the parallel adjacent Akasha and go back to the Aquarii matrices, their home matrices. But from there, there's all sorts of different things you could do, but that is the one ascension path out of this. It's the Amaria passage again, the 3, 6, and 9 gates out of this falling matrix. So now they're showing us where it plugs in, literally, compared to like where our feet are standing and that kind of thing. And we wanted you to have this so you could play with this safely. And we will do the exercise soon, but I just wanted to show you one more thing about these. You have what connects into these. These are direct sites that plug into these particular platforms. So this is the Aurora 1 platform. Shalon 7 plugs into A1. That's in Phoenix, right? That's Shalon 7 is the site that plugs, all of these plug into Shala 13, right? The core gate 13. So it starts with Shala 13 way down at the core, and the next thing you have is Shalon 7 site, which is the site that we just were asked to get in the Scottsdale area, the lower Scottsdale area. All right, then coming up this way, there's we're just showing where Kalon and Shalon shields and stuff are. That's the D2 Shalon shield at 8.5. It connects into this. And so does the D2 Alon shield at 7.5. So you got the D2 Alons and Shalons there, which means the Alon, there's a thing called fertilization of the keys or the lons of the Rechelet body, where the Alon pulls up and the Kalon drops down into the Shalon. And from that point, certain things happen that allow for the beginning of prana exchange and other things even better after that, which they haven't told me what the better after that is, but we've got that far. So these are why these sites are important. They're directly connected to the Rechelet body levels that will phase the keys and the lons, I guess we'll call them, because we got Alons, Kalons, and Shalons, and they're not the same as the smaller key cycles that were in the Partakai cycles where we were watching inside the Partakey. All right, so we got Shalon 7 is here, connects into A1, and that is a physical etheric, which means it plugs into this domain that is telluric mixed with etheric, so it's a little bit less dense than here, but not as see-through or ghost-like as etheric matter would be. Then going up from there, you run through the D2 Kalon shield. Then coming up here, the A2 connection. Look at this, Machu Picchu, Peru. This is why we're going to Peru. This plugs into the physical D2 cloud cities that are in the thermosphere. All right, and they plug into them actually through the mountains. There are things in the mountains that you go inside the mountains, down, and then up. Right? Yeah. That's why we kept getting contact there. There would be certain ones. We even had orbs and things like that on occasion that were friendly, and they were definitely of a high caliber orb. Right? Balls that talk. Right? That's where we met the first Giannis, where the Wachianis approached us there. And I think the first time we were in Peru wasn't it? Yeah. So we're looking forward to to visiting here. But now we know why Pichu is important again. And it's not just because it's planetary Stargate number 5. What's important about it is it's connected directly into the Aurora 2 platform. And that's why it's been a place where I've always had a very, very deep feeling for Pichu when we've been up there. And I could go back a million times, and now I know why, because of the connection that's there. You can feel it in the mountains. You can feel it in some of the presences that exist in those spaces. So that's the next one. That's what we're going there for Hitaro in May. And we're going to open these gates and activate these. And there's something this does that I don't even know yet that's important to getting all these to blend into the Aurora sphere or zone. The next one up is the Kalon shield of D3, 9.5 Kalon shield. It's also where Eartha D1 etheric is, and also Shalon shield at 8.5. All right, so I think that's D2. I have to see what one that is. As far as it didn't come, I don't think it came out. That doesn't go with that. It might go Eartha D1 etheric. Shalon shield, the 8.5. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. There's a Shalon shield there at 8.5, and I forget which dimension it's at because I was in a hurry. All right. See, this is why these aren't published yet. We're just giving you something that you can at least use. So, pardon the rough form. This is Kalon 7, Virginia Beach. All right. Right. This is the site that plugs in to the A3 platform, and there's somewhere else too. They said this is just one of that is the disclosed site. As they said, there is another site. And I wouldn't doubt that each one of those has another one that's not disclosed yet. All right. So that's the Kalon 7 site. And then the Alon 7 site is Colorado. That's the place we were asked to secure up in the Rockies, up in western Colorado. And we just refer to it as Alon 7, or Sage Hill, because it's a hill full of sage with a house on it. Right? Not a tree standing there, just sage. This plugs into here. And here is the same place that on here it would be this, all right? It's called the Adashi A4 Passage. Where you get up into the Adashi platforms, there are first these areas that you have first Eartha D2 gates, all right? So you're coming up in the 6.5 gates. You're coming up through the D2 aquifers, all right? And into what would be, if you're going to say, into the Ta 7 field of D2, Eartha. And from there, you go up into these areas, the winterlands. I found myself in those once trying to help my cat. And this is one of the places where I could actually roll myself over and get out of this really nasty stream of frequency that was trying to rip me apart, which I'm sure had to do with this place over here. I found myself in there, and I kept throwing myself over here to get away from this stream. I'd actually tried to, I guess they've been training me to pull people out of getting caught in these zones, if you do. And there were platforms, and this was before we ever knew about the platforms. I had experiences in Saudi where I'd find myself in Saudi in these nasty currents that were so bad they could really rip you apart. They were just, and they were coming at you like being in a really nasty wind. And I knew I had to go forward in them to get something. I was on retrieval of something. And they were teaching me how to run through these and still get out. And I find myself throwing myself out, right? I've thrown myself out to the left, right? And to the left. And I don't know why I was always to the left, but I was throwing myself out for some reason to the left as far as the experience goes, and that was getting me into these zones. And the one I remembered most clearly was up here. They call it the Winterlands, frozen fields, because they look like just frozen mountains. And I ended up way down here someplace looking up at these peaks. And it reminded me of Colorado a little bit, but it had a lot more snow than I'd ever seen there, right? It was just like blue sky, beautiful blue sky, and it looked sunny. I didn't see a sun, but it looked sunny, like sunny blue sky, and beautiful mountains, but snow everywhere as far as the eye could see. And I remember my cat came running down. This is a cat that had passed over and transitioned a while back. Right? She had come running down, and she let me know something. And she was letting me know something about these zones. But what I had done was ride up here in order to get her, and then kind of dove over to these safe zones to get out of the current over there. So this zone here, because there is the D3 upper H zone is here, and this is one of the control zones. It's one of the ones that controls the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere of the planet runs in the same place as the crust of Eartha. So literally where our magnetosphere is, where going out when you send satellites out, you go through that magnetosphere thing, that is the band that the surface of Eartha actually exists within. So anyway, these would be the Adashi temples. This is the Adashi passage that comes from the A4 platform. When you come into the A4 platform, you would come up through the aquifer gates, the D2 aquifers of Eartha, and then you would come up into these, they're like underground frozen caverns, kind of like igloos. But, you know, when I was up there, I didn't feel cold. It looks all cold and snowy, but I didn't feel any temperature. I wasn't warm or cold, but I felt alive. So I wasn't like in no zone or something. It was strange. But it was they were very pleasant, actually. They were very pleasant places to be, and they correspond with passing through the winterlands fields. These have to do with frozen fields that allowed them to block out portions of the hibernation zone where they could still keep a passage open up to the Adashi temples. And then when you go up from there, you go up through the mountains, and it's in the mountains here that correspond with this layer over here that you would run into this little gateway. And this is a gateway you pass through when you to the gates to the Adashi temples would be there. And every Adashi temple has one, but we've been using Adashi 7. Is the only one at the moment that's functional because of what it connects to down here. And then like these were the mountains that I saw in like the sky area that I saw from that perspective. But then when you get up in here, you're again in the mantle, the middle mantle of Eartha. And these are all crystal. They're just made of beautiful selenite and probably other types of crystal as well. And what we're finding is that crystal is actually the D1 core crystal, not D1, the level 1 of the D2 physical core crystal of Sirius B. And that's what these temples are made out of. So when we go there, we're actually going to the place of intersection between density 1, where Earth and Eartha are, and density 2, where a secured passage through Sirius B exists. So it's getting fascinating. The more we go, the more fascinating it gets. Over here, I just want to show you a bit more. I know where I'm getting. I know. So I've got to run this journey live too, which means it's really hard when they come through that way, where I don't know what the words are going to be. They just come. So I empathize with we're tired. Yeah, I know. I am too. But it's worth it, guys. If we can get ourselves up here even once and take a picture, we'd be so happy when we got back. Even happier if we didn't have to come back. Right? Okay, so here is the Ansanstasia passage host that will run through here. These zones right now are separated by various fields, but they do give you a good hopscotch jump where you can get through up to the Adashi temples without getting caught in the hibernation zones. If you ever find yourself where you feel like you're being caught in this really nasty current that's trying to rip you apart, you probably are in the hibernation zones, but you won't go there without someone actually, you're on a tether. It means you're being trained as a way shower. All right, that is one classic thing of way shower training, is finding yourself in those zones, because there are people that have been snatched into those zones that don't want to be there, that are Christic races, that have been waiting to be rescued, and now is the time when they will be rescued. So some people will have commissions as way showers, and if you have training in other lifetimes of this, there will be the ones that wake up to that first. So if you find yourself in what feels like, oh God, well, those horrible currents, right? Go, am I a way shower? And look for the one who's watching your back, because you'll have kind of like, you know how when you teach people to swim, sometimes you keep a little harness on the kids, right? You will have a harness, and they will pull you back over onto the platforms, but you're being trained for reconnaissance, where you can go in and get out any hosters that need help getting out and that kind of thing. Not everybody will have that, but if you ever do, don't get scared and be afraid to journey. Realize you won't fall into those spaces on your own. Once you've got that access key journey, that means you have got somebody that will watch out for you, and they won't let you fall into those zones. But if you find yourself in the zones, it means you're in the zones because you're being trained to work them and to move back and forth to be able to assist others who need that kind of help. So I just thought I'd tell you that. Now, what's going to happen here? See these little funny bands that have spiky little, well, they're actually supposed to be sun rays. Right. Yeah, didn't have much time. But these are the areas that correspond, again, with the maps. These would all correspond with like the areas that every one of these lines could be marked with exactly what set of D whatevers with the whatever gel levels are on. They're all coordinates on those maps. So these are two. And what they correspond to are the layers where the D1, D2, and D3 layers of the aqualene sun frequencies are going to be activating in the planetary body. But first they're going to be activating in your body, in your Rachalet bodies, and in the indigo shield body. And from there, we can do a slow activation so it doesn't blow the doors off the nets and make everything come crashing down really wildly. The indigo shield will stop that from happening. It can hold enough to hold the Anastasia passage open and here, while Earth can progressively and more gently move into the opening of these coronaspheres, because they are the coronasphere layers, and they will become aqua suns, where they will have the frequencies of the aqualene transmission running through them. So they will not just have the power of one akasha, which would be one crystal spiral stream. They'll have the power of three of those, which will be the crystal river stream, the three akashas. But then they will have the arc of Aquarii in with that, and they will which is the outer domain one. Then they will also have the Anastasia, yes, that's the one. I have to say it fast and it comes out better. Passage ray, which is another greeny turquoise color one. And then it will also have the Hathor hub color, which is a more purpley blue mixed in with that, right? So all of these frequencies are going to blend together, and they will be activating in the Rachalet bodies of the indigos, and that will help. That will be very healing for us. It will give us huge ability to do what can be done with the gene codes that we've got here, as far as healing much faster than anything else could help us to. I can't guarantee we're all going to turn into wonderful silica crystal beings in 24 hours or anything, but and then run through the gates. Right? No. But those frequencies will activate in here, so our auric fields will begin to carry these, and eventually the planet will be able to hold more and more of those frequencies. And it will also give those in the hibernation zones and those in other places who are not, let's say, have any interest in running Krishna-cadendras, it will give them some time to decide where they would like to go before it turns on completely, because when those frequencies of the aqualene sun turn on completely, it is what happened in the first stand of Aquarii, when the core gates were open to allow the Rachalet body activation of the planet. And this time, it's a lot stronger than then, because they weren't running the full host, because this is the end game at this point. They didn't have to open the Anastasia passage that time fully. So this time, that is open, so the frequencies are even stronger. So there will be a period of time, I don't know how long, since we all got somewhere between 500 and 1,000 years before the nova thing happens on the sun. They will allow a time for those whose biologies can't tolerate that to make other arrangements for themselves and their kind. Now, whether they want to do that, who knows? Usually these guys that work the anachristic agendas are very sore losers, and they will just fight to the end, even if it's stupid. We'll see. No matter how many walls they run into, no matter how many little soldiers they just let fall and get wiped out, they'll just keep sending more. It's like they're convinced they're going to win, and I guess, it's like I have a mantra I use sometimes, that failure is not an option. But I guess you could take that too far, where you actually say, stop. The anti-Christic ones seem to take that to an extreme that it's not a useful thing anymore, because sometimes you can not fail by changing your direction, and they tend to not. So we'll see what they're going to do here. But in the meantime, the activation we're going to have tonight has to do with activating the prana seed. I don't know what it is yet. It's going to come through live. I just love those. I have no clue myself, right? But I think we're going to use something horizontally. Why, I don't know. I'm not done yet, though. I want to show what I didn't want to show. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would like to show you now, a little more personally, of where your Rachalet body is, right? Remember the Rachalet body, right? Here's the ones we were looking at, right? That go this way. That was the D3 level of the Rachalet body. This one is the D2 level of the Rachalet body. Okay. Now, if we remember, we've talked about the Rachalet body in relation to the Ekatharista body, which is the outside bodies, and the 12-point in the Rachalet Cathara grid would be the 9-point in the outside Yukatarista body. So if that 12 point becomes a 9 point of the next one out, this is doing those proportions that have to do with the spin proportions, right? That create the crystal spiral size as opposed to the ones that are embedded and go boing, 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 right? All right, so 9, this I didn't have time to put all the Kathara centers in, but this would be the 12 Kathara center on the D3 Rashalay body grid, and that would be the 9 Kathara center on the D3 Yukatarista body grid. Now the Yukatarista body grid is what we've been using as we've been studying our chakras and all of those kind of things that are part of the Yukatarista bodies. So what it means is this would be the Kathara grids we have been studying in their relationship to the Rashalays. This being the, all right, so this is the D3 Rashalay. The D3 Yukatarista is a bit bigger, and that's where its 12 becomes a 9 of that one. So this is the D3 level of the Yukatarista body. We already have and know where the body fits inside of that Kathara grid structure. Same with the D2 one. I think this is hilarious, this little guy here. I had to make them smiling at each other, I really did. This is one of the ones I tried to get to come out for you. We tried to get it to come out clear. No matter what we did with the machine, you couldn't read the stuff. It just all filled in. Even this one's pretty bad. But we wanted to be able to take this one home. But this shows the D2 Rashalay body grid that we've been looking at, right? These are the D3 and the D2 ones we've been looking at on the planetary level with all the fields and things, fields and shields. So that's the D2 Rashalay. Now, if you take the D2 and make its 12, the 9 point of a spin expansion, all right, this gives you your D2, which happens to fit perfectly inside the D3 one, like it should. Because these two, the outer domain ones, have where the top and the top and the bottom align with the EUMB and the Rajna, right? They have the embedded expansion, just like these have the embedded expansion together. But in relation to each other, they have the spin expansion ratio. So what ratio. So what it gives you is a situation where you have one, if you're looking at this, your Rashalay body vertically, like we have been looking at on those diagrams, right? It implies that over here is where your physical body is. So if you want to look at this another way, can you turn that where the feet are down, please? There we go. Okay. There is the Kathara grid for your D2 physical body, right? Just like we've been looking at, same proportions. You got your Yumbi, you got your Rajna area. He's a little stretched out, actually. He grew. The machine made him grow. He wasn't that long in the face. But anyway, trying to hold the proportions on a portable printer, it's not a printer, it's a portable copier type machine. It doesn't work too good, but you get the idea. These are supposed to be perfectly proportioned, Kathara grids, etc. Right? But this is your D2 grid. This would be your D3 body, right? Where your mental body self would be. This little guy over here would be your D2 level of your Rashalay body, your D2 Rashalay, right? So if you look at where that is, it's over here, over your right shoulder, the mentor space. They've been having us work with that layer of ourselves all along, which I think is hilarious. Yeah, so that's why we got our little mentor on our shoulder. We're not going to grow one there, but we don't have to worry about becoming two-headed monsters. But all of those same things that we talked about, where the nets come in. Up here you have the D3 net. Now these things are all manifesting. These were the templates. Well, they're the bodies, they're the Rashalay body. But what they create is the projection that becomes the bodies that are made of the 15-dimensional outer domain light spectrum and that stuff. So there's levels of our Earth that these levels of our Earth translate into these levels of our Earth on the outer domains. So we're actually seeing these, but they're the same structure as these. But I wanted you to see the relationship. They wanted you to see the relationship with the 45-degree shift. So if the axis is here of your physical self, it would imply that clockwise over here, counterclockwise, sorry, over here, over your right shoulder, would be where the top axis of your Rashale body is. I don't know why they want us to know that, but it probably has something to do with something we're going to do, I wouldn't doubt. So anyway, the same applies to the earth, but you can still see where the nets run. When you expand these out and and treat these layers just as if they were the layers in the smaller grids, because these are proportionately a bit smaller than the ones that correspond, like the D3 one, or the where am I? The D3 one here is smaller than the D3 one here, for example. But if you just take the same layers and put them, put the 15 layer structure here, you have 15 manifest layers also that go with the 15 ones from the Rashale body. And what you find is you got your D3 net coming in here, which means you got hibernation zones above and below. You've got your D2 one, I believe, here. No, wait a minute. Yeah, no, D3 one's up here. The D2 one is here, and the D1 net is here. So it's showing where they even come through the physical bodies ourselves. So that's where our pineal is being blocked. Yeah. So it also shows something. I think it's over here in the corner here. As far as the body axes, when we're dealing with the Taran and the seed atom and the light seed, we've always dealt with the Taran on a vertical axis with one ball on top and two on the bottom, right? That's because in the Partakai template that goes all the way up to the seed atom, from the Taran to the seed atom, that is on, say, vertical axis, right? Now, when you get to the Partiki templates of the Rashale bodies, they are on this axis, which means the prana seed is on this axis, right? And then when you go back to the outer domain bodies, or the outer level bodies of the Eucatharista, they are back on the horizontal. I'm getting worse and worse with this. No, it's not horizontal, dear. That's vertical, yes. So we've got the vertical at the first level, and then it goes into the Partiki templates at the 45-degree counterclockwise shift, and then back to the vertical. Yeah, this is what happens when I'm tired and I've been working since like dawn on these, and then trying to teach them right without even sleeping or anything. So I get a little tongue-tied. I do apologize. So they just wanted you to understand that you do have that little mentor on your shoulder that we've learned about a long time ago. Had to do with even then, beginning Rashale body activation when we're using Maharic seal and that kind of stuff to begin the process of finding that part of ourselves. So if it got this bad on the planet, there would be somebody capable of waking up fast enough to do what needed to be done to create the best possible outcome for the most possible beings in the situation that this planet and solar system are in. And you guys keep showing up, and I'm just really glad you do. What this is also showing is where the aqualene sun rays are going to activate in the Rashale body structures, and how they will manifest out into the Eucatharista body structures. In both the Eucatharista body and the Rashale bodies, they will come in on the 12, 13, 14, and 15 layers, which would be the natural coronosphere layers. All right? And it's interesting because you'll get the Rashale ones come in, or Rashale ones come in with gaps between them. And then when the ones from the Eucatharista grids come in, they fill in those gaps. So you end up with full rays coming in. At some point, we'll look like big, pretty aqua, like translucent aqua opalescent kind of suns in our auric fields. Kind of like be known by our suns. Maybe not by our names, but you'll know us by our suns. We're the aqua ones, right? So this is the process we're involved in. The process has to do with something called prana exchange. And we'll go through that really quickly so we can get to it, right? Next one. I don't think I have anything there that I have to show, do I? No, I was just showing the same thing. I did the same thing with that, yeah. Yeah, I need that one for prana exchange. Yeah. We're going to show them the krystar first real quick, because they've seen it before, so I just want to remind them. That's one that at least looks nice. And this, we've talked about the krystar cycle and activating the Risha A, krystar vehicle with the Rashale body activation to be able to go through starfire. This is the krystar capsule, the crystal capsule. There'll be certain journeys that they'll eventually will have them like out where they're available to the public that will involve understanding yourself to be in one of these capsules when you go for your journey. These are the krystar crystal capsules around you, and you have this lovely flame around you, and then you'll have like this gorgeous aqua sunburst coming around you, and you can ride up and down in those. You can teleport and levitate in them and that kind of stuff once they're fully activated. So it's the krystar crystal capsule that this is, and these are the core, the middle, and the core, the inner, and the middle flame. Actually, there's several layers that go beyond that when you get into aqualene sun. But they wanted me to remind everyone about the krystar crystal capsule. I think we showed that where Tenerife. I can't remember where that came through. But anyway, back to how this activation begins of activating krystar and activating the prana seed. It has to do with prana exchange. The easiest way I can describe prana exchange to you without going through about 40 diagrams that I don't have done yet, is going back to this, the partiki body. And you know what? I think I need to sit down for this because my knees are starting to give out. Hold on a second. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh. Ow. Alrighty. Now, the easiest way I can explain prana exchange. And remember, now we're looking at this on the vertical again. We're looking at the Rashale body, but on the vertical, or the partiki body that forms the Rashale body on the vertical, but actually that's the thing that's tilted at this axis as far as your body goes, right? Where your outside body is this way, and it's 45 degrees. It's over here, coming in over your left shoulder. Right shoulder. What is my word problem? My gosh. I have never had so many in one workshop, so many times that my brain said one thing and the opposite flipped out my mouth. This is why sometimes with the translations, I'm triply careful because forget about typesetting. I don't worry about that. But what I make sure is before I have anything down, I've got my lefts and my rights. Because when I'm speaking it verbally, I've heard stuff and I just go, why did I just say left when I meant right? Why did I just say right when I meant left? That kind of thing. So just so you know, I am very careful. I do check myself several times with anything like that, particularly if there's directions that need to be done. I hate when they make me do live ones when my mouth is doing that. They said, don't worry about it. The reason I'm having that problem is because of the incoming, that they're incoming to give me the flow for the journey. And I'm getting more and more of the eartha frequencies coming in, so it's making me trip over my own lips. Great. Right, so we can all babble our way out of here. No. Well, let's try prana exchange. Now, without having a million graphs to try to explain this process, first, we're at the partiki body, and that's like you have the layers of the Rashale body on top of that. Right? At the partiki body layer, you have at the center, you will have your tarn. Actually, no, that's the tarn. I'm sorry, I'm tired. You have your prana seed. The prana seed looks just like the tarn. It has one ball on top and two down below. Now, of course, it looks like it's tilted on its side when you're looking at it in relation to your outside body, but let's just look at our inside bodies on the vertical right now to understand prana exchange. Now, in prana exchange, the prana seed at the center, there's a little thing called the Iran point, which is an opening, an aperture that opens and closes between the partiki templates and everything that's outside, builds out from them, and everything that was before them, from the seed atom all the way down to the taran. All right, this goes for each layer. Each layer of the bodies has this, from the Rashale body, the Rashale body on the outside, the Rashali on the middle, the Rashala on the inner, and I think the Rasha and the core would be the first cycle of it. So we're just talking about one layer of this, say the outer domain Rashale body, all right, has at its center a prana seed that looks in the same configuration as the taran did in the first creation cycles. Now, what the prana seed does is called a prana seed because it's made of, one of the reasons it's called a prana seed is because it's made of, I don't have one here to show you actually on this diagram, but if you can just think of one ball on top and then two small in a phase set, right? Just like you have partiki in a phase set, that kind of thing. All right. It has one Iran and two half pranas. They're not really half. The quantum is like 2/3, 1/3, but they are a prana ki and a prana chi. And when the prana ki and prana chi phase together or come together and spark, they form a prana spark. When that prana spark occurs, it's just like when you go back to first creation, all the way back down to the partiki phasing, the triad that phases, that creates the tar and that kind of thing. When the prana seed phases, it makes its prana spark. It sparks open the Iran point doorway that would be at the center that leads back to the seed atom. Right? When that occurs, now there's something that happens first that before it sparks, but on the first phase, a prana gets sent back. It opens the aperture, and when the prana spark gets sent back, the exchange happens. When prana is exchanged, prana is the back flow to source or towards source, right? It releases a flow of mana energy. All right, prana is the stuff that had the 11 2/3 positive charge, in the base 11 2/3 positive charge energy that came from the mana, right? Well, mana gets sent back, which is the 21 2/3 charge energy. This sets in motion. There's an exchange where prana goes in, prana spark goes in, and it allows a mana flow to come back out. And there's a process by which prana sparks occur, and that process has to do with these tubes. Now, these are fire chambers. All right, and when we talked about the partiki, the little one inside of the taran, they were called fire lines or key lines. That's where the keys, when the taran pulsed, it made sparks, and those sparks aligned along the 12 fire lines. Well, these are key lines. These are the partiki body's version of key lines, but they're actually chambers or tubes. These tubes, form around the layers that what used to be in the small partiki, the Alon, Kalon, and Shalon sets that were a phase that the keys go through as far as going into storage. These are on the larger scale. They're on the partiki body, and they're born out as a set of shields with the partiki body, where you have the Alon shield that holds the jewels, which are specific quantums of energy. I believe the jewel is the prana carrier. All right, the jewel is embedded in mata ore, and it creates what are called alons, which are actually jalons, but the J is silent, so you end up with alon. Right? So you have alons. The next one out are the shalons. All right, they are the base tones. They're ire holders, or they're crystals of stored ire energy, or ira energy. Sorry, and that's 11 2/3 negative base. And there's a whole shield of them, small bits of them, and then the big main ones. These are considered the fire crystals, the aurora fire crystals that we've talked about. These are the aurora fire crystal versions that are on the partiki body level. And these are the kalons. And the kalons, they actually form up here in the ka-la band, and then they come down for storage and store in the raka band. So these are actually running through our crust. Wherever we have that raka layer of the 9.5, that would have a kalon shield in it. What happens with alons, kalons, and shalons, and these other little thingies out here that are called orons? They're called orons because you have the raw field here, the final raw field 15 here, and here you have the aurea dark light shield that is out here. It's not even, it's dark light field that is out here, and at 15.5 there is a boundary or a band that is the ore from here, and the Ra band. So orons are orons that correspond with here. They are crystals too, and they have a specific role in the relationship with alons, kalons, and shalons. And alons, kalons, and shalons have a specific role with each other. If we think in terms of how the taran used to pulse, where it would contract and expand, and every time it contracted, it would make a set of 12 sparks, right? And that's how it built quantum and built charge, so it could expand or get larger. Now, with the partiki body, which is much bigger than the taran was, right? We're talking about the larger body now, and it's fire tubes or fire chambers, and it's sets of alon, kalon, and shalon crystals. Well, this contracts and expands too. The partiki body contracts, and when it contracts, it doesn't fully pull in to the center, but it contracts its whatever they're called at that layer, spans and rings in, where spans and rings rub through each other and spark. And each one of those spark lines will create a set of sparks that have the specific characteristics of the type of gels that were combined when they squeezed. Like if you have like ring whatever goes into band whatever and that bumps into band whatever, you would get characteristics of the encryption of each of those layers. So if you have one contraction, now the contraction would be like the inhale. Contraction, right? Spark, then exhale. On the expansion that would follow it, and it starts with the first ring, all right? The first ring in there, and the first contraction, it makes 12 sparks in that first ring, so you get nada sparks. And at the first exhale, it will create, those 12 sparks that were created will go and they will fill or load the span that is around it. All right, so span 1 will load. Now, after 12 contractions or inhale, exhales, right? Inhale, exhale breaths, each one of the bands where the sparks are made in the ring or the layer level, then they expand out into the corresponding band. So by the time you get done with 12 breaths, where are we? Here. You would have the 12 sparks would be formed, and they would go into the band 12. Now, at that point, something interesting happens. You have each of these rings loaded with spark quantum at this point. And at that point, there is almost like a really quick snap. Kind of, I wouldn't call it convulsion because it's not like, oh, it's more like yeah, really quick spasm, right? Spasm, that's a good word. I like that. All right, spasm will work. So because there's so much quantum buildup and the Partiki body is holding so much quantum at this point where it's going on quantum saturation, it does a spasm, kind of like our backs are doing right now and have been for the last hour, right? Yeah. Well, when it spasms, it pulls the center bits and the loaded rings closer into the center, and it makes a big spark, and that spark triggers the prana exchange to happen. So prana exchange gets its spark to make it happen because of the expansion and contraction of the Partiki body that builds charge until it does a little spasm that allows for a spark to form by the inner Adama, I believe, probably is what sparks. That usually is the thing that sparks in keys. So the Adama ends up sparking the prana seed at the center, which opens the ear point, sends a prana unit through, and as backflow to source, and then the backflow return of mana comes back out. Now, something fascinating happens when mana comes back out. It's something called, here we go, help me. There's about 5 graphs that go with this that I don't have any of them done, but it's called, in key terms, keys do this too way back in the Partiki, but Alons, Shalons, and Kalons do it as well in the Partiki body. It's called, this level, it would be called Lon fertilization. In the key level, it would be called key fertilization. Right? Now, Lon fertilization, Alon, Kalon, Shalon, right? No, Alon, Shalon, Kalon is how it goes, actually. Ask, A-S-K, Alon, Kalon, Shalon. Now, in the fertilization, when the mana backflow return is released after source, or actually the seed atom receives its prana spark going back toward source, and it releases its mana spark. There's stuff happens where it creates that mana spark because it does all sorts of things like convulse and spin and make more sparks itself, so the seed atom kicks mana back out when it gets hit with prana, but we don't have to go there. Just know that the prana goes in from sparking out here, finally sparks the prana, makes a prana spark that goes back in, and it triggers the release from the seed atom of a mana spark. The mana spark comes back out the ear point and breaks into 12 smaller mana sparks, and one of each of those 12 sparks, mana being a positive charge, right, electrical positive charge, one of each of those comes into one of the fire chambers, and at the same time they all go out the fire line, and because the mana is a positive charge energy, they are drawn to the negative charge of the ire, which is the shalon, right? So you have 12 little mana sparks coming out, and they all go into the center of the shalon, and they spark the shalon. Sparking of the shalon, they spark the outer part of the shalon. Sparking of the outer part of the shalon, because you had the positive spark coming out, positive to negative, it causes a spark there. Now, that releases something called a manu spark. So something happens. You got a Manu spark where you have Mana and Ire come together, and they form a Manu spark. And that Manu spark starts to go back down that way, while these, the formation of the Manu spark actually causes the center or the core of the Shelon to magnetize, and it draws up the Elon and draws down the Kalon. So the Kalon and the Elon meet at the Shelon and become one. And then they release a huge Manu spark, and that goes back down as backflow return again. This gets interesting. All right, so each one of these at the same time, I think this at the same time. Yes, at the same time? Yes, at the same time. Okay. At the same time, they all fertilize, where you have, let's say if you looked at them as egg and two sperms. I don't know what you look at them as. If that would be the egg, one of these would represent the sperm. Or let's say maybe one would represent the sperm and one would represent the spirit coming together. Because I know this is the same process that is involved with conception, but they haven't given me those records yet on how to explain that. So what we have are the Alons and Kalons coming into the Shelon, releasing a big Manu spark, which is Ire and Manu put together. And those Manu, the 12 Manu sparks, because you have 12 sparks happening at the same time, 12 sparks going back to the center, the 12 of them, the 12 Manus, sparking the Iran Corrigan, sparking another prana phase. Another prana spark is made, so the Manu rides in on the prana spark into the seed atom, and at that point, with all of that Manu going inward, there's a spark and a set of chain reactions that happens between the seed atom all the way back to the Taran and the first creation point that releases an X spark, a positive charge X spark, which is stronger. All right, so the Ek comes back as the backflow return from the Manu spark that goes out. And at this point, you have all of these keys have come together. So the X spark goes out. And this is happening on each of these chambers or lines all at the same time. As the X spark goes out, it activates each of the bands. The X spark is keyed to the bands. So every band that it crosses, it brings that band into activation. All 15 of the... sorry, I had that wrong. The layers. All right, the X spark triggers the layers. It's a positive charge, so I guess they must have some kind of hidden negative base charge because they trigger with the Ek. So we're talking about the layers or the, what are they called, rings. So it triggers the rings to activate all the way out, and the X spark goes all the way out. It goes past these. These become something, and they're sitting here, probably something similar to tachyons in the other, in the key generation cycle. They haven't told me about that part yet. So far we've got them fertilized there and a big Manu spark. And we have an X spark coming back from the Manu backflow that was sent. We have a backflow return of Ek that comes out and triggers each one of the rings until it gets out, out on its fire line, out to this layer. Then it triggers the Oron unit, which is another crystal that's at the D15.5 band. It triggers that, and the X spark goes out into the Aurea field, all right, or Aurea shield. When it hits the Aurea shield, remember you have 12 little X sparks hitting the Aurea shield at the same time. They create a vibration in that dark light sound field, and that vibration sends a vibration back down through the tube that was open, because when that X spark comes out, it actually spirals out and it opens a tube, an outward going tube through the fire chamber. That's why the line becomes a fire chamber. So it's like literally a spinning, spiraling chamber of energy. And when the X sparks hit the Aurea field, they create a vibration. That vibration goes flying back down the tubes, creating a counter rotation, which creates an electromagnetic wave that runs down each of the fire chambers. And once the Aurea is I keep wanting to say Aurea like we used to say, but it's not. It's the Aurea. All right. Once the Aurea, you wouldn't say it's not a spark exactly. You could say the Aurea sparks. It sparks the bands, but it's actually a vibration that is released. And they're called the Aurea tones because as the Aurea vibration moves back down the fire line, it causes sparks to happen in the spans or the band layers between. So there's a tone that would sound for each of these, or a set of tones that would sound for each of these layers. At this point, you have all of the rings activated, and on the return, all of the layers activated. The X spark does something in the center. They haven't told me what it does yet. But when all of these rings and layers, okay, that's what it does, right? When all of these rings and layers are activated together, the boundaries between them break up, all right, where they dissolve. So it all becomes one field. And as that becomes one field, the orons descend. They merge with the shalons, alons, and kalons that are still at the shalon shield layer. And then they all pull into the center with the returning X sparks, and the entire field, because all of the bands and layers were released, so it's just one field at this point, goes and shoom, and goes back to source. And then it can come back out again and go, right? So there is a flashing on and off that is supposed to happen with molecules and atoms and things in the outer domains that has to do with the flashing on and off of the partiki body of the dark matter templates. And we don't flash on and off like we're supposed to, because we don't do prana exchange on the outer, because we can't do prana exchange on the partiki body levels, because this planet has not been able to at all since 15,400 BC. So when we begin to reinstill the ability to breathe, where we have the outer bodies being able to breathe as well, we started in Tenerife with activating the Taran light seed. All right, that's the first part of the first creation cycle. If you remember, there's the first partikai, the second partikai, and they form the triad, and it phases, and it makes sparks, and that forms the Taran. And then after 9 different things that happen to build the Rosetta cluster, then you have the first seed atom forming. All right, that's way back. All right, that's way deep down in our creation. Yes, we started even on the outer domain level. We still have a Taran. We started the process of trying to heal our Taran. We got the indigo shield Taran activated in the right way, but it takes a while for that cycle to complete itself fully. We've got far enough in the cycle where at this point we are able to activate the prana seed with the support of the Anstanstasia host coming in. What it means is in our partiki bodies that are part of our Rashalay bodies, they're the ones that are over at this angle, right? And we have our larger bodies of the Yucatharista around us. What it means is we will be able to spark the core prana seed. And then the prana seed is in the same place as your seed atom. They're linked through that little doorway called the Iran point. All right. So it means you also have a prana seed that goes with your inner domain body, or your middle domain body, that will be connected to your Shadi seed atom, as we've talked about. But this time we're working with the first one that we need to work with, which is the one that's directly related to the outer Rashalay body. And that one is the prana seed that would be at the Azare. At the Azare point, it would be closer to the density level of your body than the Taran light seed would be. All right, so you have the Taran light seed way back in there in like less densities. Then you would have the various layers of your Rasha bodies, but even all right, take it just from the Rashalay. They're saying, okay, you would have a Taran even for the Rashalay level, because each level does get a Taran. But even from that level, that is the Partikai level. The change from Partikai to Partiki occurs once you go into the formation of the Partiki template. And the Partiki template is what the Partiki body and the Rashalay body manifest on. And they are what the outer Yucatharista light bodies and your physical body, as you know it here, manifest on. All right, so we are dealing with a little bit bigger sized seed that's still the 3-ball configuration, just like the Taran would be, or the Taran light seed. But it would be pointed, its top ball would have an axis coming in over your shoulder from your mentor space area because of that alignment that I showed you before. Now, with the prana seed being triggered, I don't know how they're going to trigger this. I don't know if they're, oh yes I do, okay. Yeah, that was quick. Oh, something about the 13th breath. Okay, right. If each inhale is a contraction of the Rashalay, and each exhale is an expansion, after 12, you have all 12 of the bands, or spans. You have all 12 of the spans charged with sparks. And it's at that 13th one where you do the 13th contraction, where there's so much there that you get that little, that probably at the top of the inhale, I wouldn't doubt, in the breath, that allows for what happened first? I said it once. What was it we had? Oh, for the prana phase, right? That's what allows the 13, 14, and 15 core gates, because this is what the prana seed is on a planetary level. In your own self, it is a D13, 14, and 15 point of radiation of those frequencies that are held in there. They will phase together. 13's on top, and then 14 and 15 form the little two on the bottom, and I'm not sure which is on which side, but they will phase, and they will spark and make a prana spark, and that will open the Eron point. And that, I believe, has not been done as far as a backflow through the Eron point has not been done for a long time. I think on this planet what they've said has been happening is because the reversals of the 15 and 14 gates, which are the smaller ones that are supposed to phase, it actually held the Eron point open to where they were sucking energy off the seed atom of the planet by forcing the Eron point to stay open, but never anything flowing back to it. So we're going to open the Eron point the right way. We're going to spark it with prana, and that's going to start the mana flow coming back. So we will be getting the mana flow coming back out through our Rashalay bodies and into our outer bodies as well. There is a window that matches this, or a configuration like this. It has to do with every atom in our bodies, and it has to do with the electron rings. I know that the band 8, which I believe, if layer 8 is here, I believe this is band 8. That corresponds to the 8th electron orbit around atoms here that science has identified. So these, they would all correspond to the ones going toward the nucleus somewhere in there. Of course, it corresponds to the nucleus. We'll have those diagrams eventually. But what we're doing by initiating prana exchange is allowing for the prana spark to be formed, building the charge first, allowing the prana spark to be formed, and doing something specifically that will allow the prana spark to go back through the way it's supposed to as a backflow to source frequency, which will allow, on the exhale, the mana to come out. And when the mana comes out in its little 12 burst, when the mana comes out from the Eron point at the center, it will begin the process. It will go and it will they call it the quickening. It will quicken the shalons, and that will cause the alons and the kalons to come together, and the fertilization process will begin. And the fertilization process is the process by which then a Manu spark, each 12 Manu sparks simultaneously will form at the fertilization point, and the Manu spark will go back, 12 of them will go back as backflow again, and then an X spark, a full X spark, will be released, which is the first sound of one hand clapping. It is the... right. Yeah, I won't even go back and try to analyze that. We had that exactly what the X spark is in relation to first creation before the first Partakai was born. So it is like, let's say, the first always spoken, unspoken word of source. It's also the sound of one hand clapping that makes the X sound, because it goes. It's also the sound of Partakai phasing. Right. So the X sparks will come back out, and the X sparks will trigger the activation of the rings. So it's going to begin the first process of activating our Rashalay bodies, where we're going to initiate prana exchange in our bodies, where prana is exchanged for mana, and then mana makes Manu, and Manu is exchanged for Ek, and then Ek activates the rings, and then Ek triggers the vibration of the Aureas, and that activates the spans. And I'm wondering what level this is going on at first, because I don't think we're going to disappear tonight. But one of these times I may be surprised, where y'all get to go somewhere and come back and go, whoa, cool. Right? But I think they would have given me some heads-up warning on that one. But we're going to begin this process, and we have not been able to engage this process. Even the indigo shield hasn't been able to, because the indigo shield is key to two things. It's key to Eartha and Sala for in Sala. It's also partially keyed to the sun, which they're cutting those connections. They're shutting them down now, so our gates don't compact in the center of us as well. All right. So we're beginning this process. They haven't told me anything yet about what level of the Rachalet this corresponds to. I mean, is it the whole Rachalet? How many cycles of this does it take before you get to pop through the middle point? They did say it's not just 12 breaths, then the 13. There's a set of 12, there's like 12 rounds of 12 plus 1 breath. All right, to do a full cycle, and that's as far as they've told me anything about this. And I believe we're going to do the first, what? Okay, all right. The first 4 cycles, they're telling me now. We're going to do the first 4 cycles of 12s. That will be 48, 48 plus 4, basically, because you'll have that 13th breath at the end of each one. Now, this, all right. This has to do with cycles and how many it takes to activate which. They were telling me earlier that there are certain seals, and this was stuff that was like, I put in file 13 for Peru at this point, or maybe 12 tribes 4, I don't know. But it was saying which bands specifically had to be brought into activation, and that would be brought into activation tonight in order to create in the fields the level of aqualene sun activation that would be needed to deal with whatever the sun is going to let loose. I thought that wasn't coming until 2008. That isn't. The other is. Oh, great. I'm letting you hear the conversation, basically. Oh, boy. Okay. There's something that we need for the 4 layers activated and the 4 bands activated for by the end of this week. So they're starting this now. This is another thing we were supposed to do like in Peru, but they're activating the rings faster. Okay. I don't know if they're going to do a journey at the end of this or not, but we're going to do the breathing bit. The purpose of this is the first full-on level of, we're not just like doing one little ring at a time. You can activate the rings, but to open the Iran point requires a certain level of charge, is what they are saying. All right, we are going to finally build that charge to open the Iran point. We've triggered the activation in the 12 tribes classes. We've triggered the activation in the Indigo shield, and we're beginning the process in the Earth shield of the rings 1, 2, and 3 so far. 1 and 2 are open, but they have been triggered by the host frequencies that are being brought from the aqueous matrix, which means the crystal river is hosting them, but they have not. The Iran point has not been opened. There has not been a prana spark that has happened yet. So the next stage in all of this is, now that we have enough quantum to have activated those first 2 rings that will allow enough frequency to be built. So when we do, it will allow actually enough magnetism to occur for a contraction to actually take place, so you can have the spark cycle start. So they had to do those activations that tribes 1 and 2 had done in opening rings 1 and 2 before there would be enough interplay between the nada and the adama to actually create a magnetism that would allow for a contraction to occur. So we're going to go into the breathing, and they will probably take it someplace from there, but they're not going to take you on like a 4-hour journey at this hour. Okay? But they're telling me a lot, but they're doing it in like the direct cognition stuff that it's like listening to a record on 78 when you try to slow it down. I mean, it's really interesting. So I just kind of go, yeah, right, yeah. When I need to speak it, put it in words, please. Right? They're hoping that we'll get through this, and it's not that hard or that long to do this one, but they're hoping we can appreciate what it means for ourselves and for this planet to be able to have the Iran point open again, finally, the Iran point to seed atom. And I'm kind of sitting here like, well, man, I don't even know if I fully appreciate it either. It sounds great, but I don't understand how bad it was that it wasn't. You know what I mean? So, in other words, they're trying to say there's a lot we don't know, and if we did know, we would probably be really, really excited about what is happening with this. And I said, this hour in the morning, I don't think anything's going to excite us, right? Except maybe going to sleep and drifting up and going back to the Hidashi temples again, right? But please understand that it is hugely significant what is taking place here. There will be more. There will be the next level, probably 12 Tribes 4 class. We'll get that bit. And then there'll be Peru, where we actually will have enough of the host activated in our shields that we can transfer that and do this for Earth. And then it will be held open by the respirator of the Ensign passage. So we will be opening the Iran point in Peru of Earth itself, where we're doing that tonight within the Indigo Shield. And it's the first time it's been able to be done at all in this planet, any Iran points like that being open since 15,400 BC, when certain things occur that will come out eventually in the history. The history line is so long now, it's just like a book unto itself. And that's only listing them with bulleted names as far as the event without any description. So we're going to get on with this. I'm going to take a sip of something first, though, because they're going to run this live. It is basically a set of inhales and exhales. You can do this part, can't you? You can run them through this, and I can help count, right? This is a count one, a math one. I'm good at the ones that flow, and I just go out and let them run. Okay. Will you do run this one, please? I'm ready to fall over.
I don't know what to do.
It's simple. It's a set of. You start with inhale. Like, inhale, hold, exhale. 12 of those, right? Yeah. Inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale until you get to 13.
Right.
When you get to the 13th breath, inhale and pull up, hold, and then exhale. At that point, it goes on its own for a bit. Just go all the way down, where you go, empty your lungs to the bottom of the exhale, and hold for a bit at the bottom of the exhale. Then you start the next cycle of 12, right? Yeah. Until you get to the third, and it starts with inhale, right? Hold. Yeah.
Hold, exhale.
And it's just four rounds of that, basically. Yep, and that will charge the first four bands. And something happens after the first 4 bands are charged. Yeah, they'll probably give that to me as you're doing the count on that. Oh, neat. That's going to roll off. Oh. What happens if you put it on the other way? What happens if you put it up the other way? It's not. Oh. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. That's got the wave in it and everything. Right? They're gonna, the backflow. There's gonna be a backflow. One of the backflows. I don't know if it's the Ek that's gonna fly through there. But it's going to do something through there and come out there and come out into the room. Wow.
Can we give people a very fast play break now?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, if they need to do a quick potty break, yeah.
Very quick potty break.
There's something. Do we have a little flashlight anywhere? Do we have a little flashlight? Do you? Thank you. There you go. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I want to try something while you're spinning that there. They're going to do something with this. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but they've been charging that. And they're going to do something with the shape it makes up there and bring it into the room. It has to do with they're using it as an Iran point. Wow. I want to try something. I was wondering if many power. I was hoping it would give it some side bit. We haven't had it on my wire. We could, but That's what we're going to do, is actually want to take photos of it, like real up close and stuff.
I did it, and I gave it to Mommy.
Oh, cool. Thank you. They're going to ask them to direct the exhales toward that white dot in the center. So whenever they do an exhale, to direct it toward that one large white dot.
Okay.
The guy has created this crystal.
Okay, we're going to do the activation now, which, the way I recall what I've been told, the same as everyone else, is that we're going to do 4 rounds of 13 breaths. 6 in, 6 out, and the 13th breath, inhale. We're breathing from the azare, or the prana seed, deep in the, what?
6 in, 6 out.
Yeah, all together, there'll be 6 in, there'll be 6 out, and there'll be a 13th one as well. It's all right. I'm going to do it. I'll count it through.
12, inhale, exhale, 1, 12, 12 of those.
Okay. And that white spot there, you see? Of the 12 exhales, times 4, including of the exhales are going to be directed to that white spot in the middle of the crystal. Okay?
Yeah, so whenever you exhale, it's to, the inhale will be, contracting, and imagine your Rashale body contracting, and then the exhales, imagine it expanding, and it's making sparks whenever it contracts, and when you exhale, you're sending the sparks back out right to that center point. Okay? And there'll be 12 rounds of that, then the 13th one, and that is the spark one. What happens at 13? They just went through it so fast, I'm going, what was that? Right. All right. When...
Inhale and hold the breath.
Yeah, and that's
Still charged.
and you're charging all of the rings at each of the 12 inhales, and then finally you at the 13th contraction, 13th inhale, it creates the spark enough to phase the prana seed. So that will be the first time that the urta and the ruta of the prana seed come together and spark with the shala, and that will create the first prana spark. Okay, as far as I understand it. So when we're exhaling, anyway, they want us to point the exhale at that spot, that white spot. They've been doing something with this crystal ever since it was given to us as a gift by Mac, and we don't even know what artist made it. I mean, somebody made this beautiful thing, some glass artist, which I'm sure we're going to have to track down because we have to find out about copyrights and photographs and things like that because we're going to need to use this. But they want us to exhale into there, and this will begin the process of, first of all, the first set of 12 will charge the rings charge the rings and the bands. Now, it'll charge the bands. The sparks are made in the rings, and then they charge the bands on the exhales. On the 13th inhale, that will be the point when all the bands have been charged. And at that point, that 13th inhale is the first point when the Iram point will actually open. And that's when the first prana spark will be made with the ruta and the urta and the shala, and it will be brought back into source. So your first backflow return to the seed atom will happen then. And then on the 13th exhale, that will be the first time you have a mana exchange for prana, where the prana went in and it was exchanged for mana. That's why it's called prana exchange. So you'll have prana going in on the 13th inhale, and then the first mana flow coming out on the 13th exhale. And that will be the first round of 12 breaths. Then there will be 4 that we will do this time All right, so altogether it'll be like 48 plus 4, that 13th one on the end of each set of 12. Right? They will build us up to the point. Right now, the shield couldn't hold it, and there's not enough frequencies coming in the Ansistasia passage to do all 12 sets, because there would be technically 13 breaths done like 12 times, right, to charge the full thing. And they're going to build us up to that, to the point where it can be done for the period of time when we're in Peru. And whether you're not in Peru with us, you will be able to join us with those activations then. And that's when we transfer, we get our full opening of our own Iran point. And something interesting probably happens at that point, because that's when the full 12, that's when everything pulls in and comes back out, and what that looks like I don't know yet. But that's when we also give the gift to the earth itself and set the host, the indigo host here. So this is the first 4 out of what will be 12 cycles, if you want to look at them as cycles, breath cycles. And there are 12 breaths plus 1, that 13th one, in a cycle. All right, so we'll be doing the first 4 tonight. And they're going to have us do something else after we do that with this, and I don't know what it is, but for now they want us to direct the exhales, which after the first cycle will be exhales of mana energy. Because every time you exhale, and from this point on, when you breathe, you will, whenever you inhale, you will do prana exchange. Your inhale will go all the way back, trigger the prana seed, and you will get prana going in and mana flow coming out. So you are beginning to renew the mana flows in your body and in your atoms and in your cells. And this is just the beginning. This is why they've said that this will progressively give us, powers to really help ourselves heal faster than we've ever been able to do. So we're opening the core mana flows by initiating the prana exchange. So I think that helps. Does that help? Explain. See, we're learning this too. We're learning this with you. We're all learning it together. Yes.
Just the contraction expansion of the Rashomon and the body on the breath.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, I think I mentioned that, but then kind of like... Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying to remind everyone, including myself, that when we're doing those inhales, where the prana inhales, to remember to try to feel like you're contracting the Rashale body, and that would be in relation to your physical body. That would be that little head sticking out, your little mender head sticking up over your shoulder, coming in this way, right? Just imagine a sphere about here running through you that is contracting and expanding and building sparks. Contracting, sparking, charging bands. And I do believe as we get into, the first one will probably be pretty slow, and I think for each round we'll try to keep consistent, like the 12, yeah, but don't change them once you start one. Right. Yeah, but they will quicken them to by the time we get to the 4th set, that it will be pretty fast. And what that is the prana going in, mana coming out, prana going in, prana out. So it's we'll really get the juices flowing as far as the prana exchange. Alrighty, I will turn it over to you, Maestro.
Okay. She's doing this because she thinks I can count.
You better count it. Are you kidding? I've been talking backwards just about today.
All right, so we're all clear, straightened out, straightened up, so we'll get to it. So it is late, and we've got to get through this. Okay.
See that all right over there? Are we in your way?
Okay.
Okay, as long as you can see the white point, yeah. Because we could probably pull back a bit and give the ones over on this side of the room
Sure.
a view. Pull back just a bit. Okay, there you go. Because the bottom parts are important too, and just in case it starts doing anything interesting, wouldn't want anybody to miss it.
Right, it's all right. There's not so much value teasing you guys as there is teasing Joe.
You can come back. Come back.
Where are you going now? All right then. We'll start the first inhale on 3 after I say 1 and 2. I know you guys. Okay. So inhale, exhale. Right. I'll count you through them. Or I'll tell you.
Exhale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pause, exhale.
Yeah. Right. You ready? Are you ready?
Yes, dear.
Good. All right. Small things are such a relief on occasion. All right. 1, 2, 3. In. Hold. Contraction. Exhale. Expand. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. In. Hold. Out. 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 And this is the 12th breath coming up. In. Hold. Out. 13th breath now. In. Hold. Hold and build charge now. Just take a little more breath if you can. Just fill it up. And out. Just breathe easy for a moment or two. Just relax. Now incorporate in your awareness the inhale of the prana and the exhale of the mana on all of the breaths from now on, and maintain the awareness of the contraction and expansion too if you can. Okay, second round of 12 then. A little bit quicker than before. In, hold, out. 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 This is the 12th breath. In, hold, out. In, hold and build charge. Hold, hold. Just put a little more breath into the lungs. Just a little more, and out. And breathe easy for a few moments. Okay, third round now. On 3, and a little quicker again. 1, 2, 3. In, hold, out. 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 12th breath coming up. In, hold, out. And in for the 13th, and hold. Just top the breath up a little bit if you can. A little bit more. A little bit more. Out. And breathe easy. Just breathe easy for a little while. Okay, we'll do the final round now on count of 3, and this will be really quite quick. Okay, 1, 2, 3. In, hold, out. 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 12th breath. In, hold, out. In and hold. Build charge for the final 13th breath. Top up the lungs just a little bit more. Hold, build charge, and let it go.
Alrighty. Now, just breathe easy and gently. Try to move your energy around by your azure and feel, if you can feel deep in there, an opening, almost like a little hole, almost like that you can hear air wheezing back and forth gently through, like a little hole in a balloon. Try to feel the presence of the opened Iran point. Move your attention out through your body a little bit from the azure and try to get in touch with your atoms. See if you can feel these little tiny, tiny wind holes forming in the center, in the nucleus of the atoms. Because the Iran points within the atoms are opening too. Those corresponding, the atoms that are corresponding to the first 4 rings and bands will respond to this set of breaths. Every time you inhale now, you will inhale prana back from your own Rashalaya body back to your seed atom. And every time you exhale, there will be a small stream of mana that releases forward from the seed atom. There will come a time before too long on this planet when we of the Indigo Shield will be able to bring together the Alons, the Shalons, and the Kalons that correspond to bands that are out further than 4. They'll correspond to specific breath cycles. We would take you through those tonight, except they would not be able to do anything yet, because there are certain things that must be activated within the 12 tribe shield classes that we do, and the stands that we do, the elemental command stands. By the time of the Peru trip, Hitaro May of 2007, we will be prepared to finish not only the fertilization process, but we will fully charge the 12 bands, and we will engage the conception. It's the conception of the keys or the conception of the lans. And it will begin a rhythm of flashing on and off of the Rashalaya body and the outer body. It will be so fast and so slow at the same time that you will not disappear before your own eyes. And you won't be disappearing yet before other people. But it is the beginning of being able to charge through your own seed atom. Being able to build charge in the seed atom. And there will be journeys that are possible once the prana breath is a natural force within your body. The prana breath will bring the healing frequencies of prana through the body. The body has its certain level of store of prana, but when the prana seed cannot phase, it cannot restore those, so they become depleted. And because prana is the key to opening the Iran point as a backflow, when the body becomes prana depleted, it becomes mana depleted, because you do not get a mana outflow from the seed atom unless you give first the prana exchange. So we have opened the potentialities now of renewing our mana force within our bodies, the positive electrical charge energy that is one primary life force current that has magical properties, one might say, when it builds in certain quantums. Mana is key to initiating the Lan cyclings that allow for continual spark generation within the Rasha bodies and within the outer domain bodies that are connected to the Rasha bodies within the Yukatharista body. This is the beginning phase of activating the krystar, crystal capsule, and the krystar vehicle that allows passage to starfire. It also allows for the activation of the aqualene sun frequencies within the bands and layers, first the bands and then the layers of the Rashila body, which will have corresponding natural activations. Once they're activated in the Rashila body, they will then naturally trigger the activations within the Yukatharista body's corresponding layers and bands. With the breath that we have just done, the 4 cycles of the 12 plus 1, these will begin the activations of the aqualene sun within the band layers of 1 through 4. That is the first level that is possible to activate at this time on this planet. If you would for a moment, because we're waiting here, because there is going to be a response that the Rashale bodies of each of you and the Rashale, collective Rashale body of the indigo shield, it will have a response to the opening of the Iran point and the return of prana exchange. And this response will be, and we'll let you know when it's coming in, because there's a certain quick breath thing to do when it happens. But at the Azare, when this response from the Rashale and from the seed atom behind it comes, it will bring a burst into, just like we have talked about the flame at the creation point door, the first creation point door. Well, it will bring a similar type of flame. We call it the fire water flame, that will sit in the Iran point. And it is the anchoring flame for activation of all of the Rashale bands. But it is a flame that will look like this in color, but it will be living. It is a living flame, the living flame of the aquifers. Now, every matrix has aquifers. Every Rashale body has aquifers. You don't have to be an Aquari or from the Aquari matrix to have aquifers. So this is a flame that is not just belonging to the aqueous matrix people. It is a living flame. And the colors are very similar to what is seen in this very special object. If you can imagine that this flame will be emerging within your Azare very soon, when a particular tone strikes in response to the prana that you sent back to the seed atom, there will be a very specific tone. You may or may not hear the tone, but this little flame will go poop and pop right through the creation, the point of the Iran point, which is equivalent to the first creation point, but it is the first creation point of the Partiki templates. And behind it is the seed atom, behind it the Rosetta. The Rosetta is the manufacturer of the Antankarana currents, the 9-dimensional currents that come through with the higher frequency currents that form the core dimensional structure of the outer domains. When the Iran point is not opened or the prana is not phasing, the Antankarana can't regenerate itself. So it just has whatever quantum was left the last time a phase occurred. And bodies get depleted, and they eventually go into bardo because the Antankarana separates because it gets so weak. What you are doing now is beginning the process of rebuilding the strength of the Antankarana. So you will be strengthening your lifeline and your life current that goes all the way back to source. When this little flame pops and comes into the Azare, it will first pop like with its little head out as if it were birthing, with a little tiny point coming out first. And then it will flip upward and it will sit nice and proud like that, right, in your Azare. And it will sit not at the angle of the Rashile. It will sit at the angle of the Azare, which is at the vertical. So you have this little flame in there from this point forth. The crystals that you received the other night that are still in your hands. Once this flame pops, you'll be able to use those crystals to stimulate anytime you like, not only a bit of the frequencies from the crystals in beginning the aqualene transmission in your fields, but you will be able to, with 3 times, just 3 pulses, or if you can't reach your hand, 3 mental zaps to that chakra. It will trigger the flame here to replicate itself and grow really, really large and come around you as if you are sitting in this part here, as if your body is in through here, and this is all around you, and you're surrounded by the sacred fire water, and you are surrounded by the eternal breathing of source, and you can't be harmed. If you ever feel you need protection, if you ever feel you want to focus on healing, you can use this technique as far as once this pops, and it's getting ready to pop. That's why we had to wait for late, because we couldn't have done it earlier, because these are keyed to Eartha grid activations as well. And if the Eartha grids are phasing at a certain rate, and we do something before, we won't catch the wave. So a lot of times we are catching waves when we do strange hour workshops. It's not fun for you, I know, and it's less fun here because we work all day doing graphs and things, waiting for that wave as well. But if we can remember these things, that very soon it's coming within a minute or two, actually. Yeah, it's already quickening. Yeah, yeah. Okay, we'll let it know when it hits the center of the shield, and then everybody else will pick it up on, like, it'll syncopate. Okay. Because what it's going to do is the pop is going to happen first in the center of the indigo shield, and then it will trigger little pops, all at their own rate depending on your BPR. It will be different for everyone, but we'll be all close together. By the time you leave tonight, you will all have your little flames popped. And at that point, you can really use your little crystals and your pumps, where you can just contract, squeeze, and replicate, and have your flame capsule that will be part of your krystar crystal capsule. So this is the beginning of this. Now, okay, we have incoming. I just heard the tone. Okay, I just got a tone. All right. All right, we're going to ask everyone to, in about a second, do a quick, I'll let you know when. On cue, do a very quick inhale, because what we're going to do is when the thing pops in the center of the shield, we are going to inhale and bring little sparks off that flame when it pops from the shield. So, okay, 1. Okay. Okay, inhale now. And hold. Squeeze the palm 3 times, right palm, while holding. Inhale. You can give it more juice if you want by squeezing any sets of 3. And now exhale and release the palm. And push that fire water flame around your body, its replica. Try to feel the presence of this beautiful living fire water flame around your body. Imagine you can feel it's cool, like a membrane, around in your field. And it goes up further than your hands will reach. But you can feel a bit out there. And it radiates. You've got your own crystal temple with you now. Whenever you want to feel like you are in visiting the Adashi temples, this is your own little portable version. Right? You can take these also and ride them to the Adashi. You can simply ride with these. Imagine yourself sitting comfortably and gently inside the womb of a quarry, as they call it. Sit in the womb of a quarry and ride and feel yourself going vertically, where the fire water crystal will know where to interface with the aurora fields. It will know how to get you to where you go. You've already programmed your Rashale bodies of the path through the aurora fields, through the platforms. And now all you need to do is think vertical. Go vertical and aim for Adashi 7, because that's the one that is open. Right? And you can go anytime. First as a glider. And that's where you get your wings. And once you get good at gliding and the earth gets ready for that activation, you will begin to get training as sliders. And that is the next step into the aurora zone. We'd like to thank you for staying up with us. Sometimes it is worth it. We hope you feel that this was worth it this time. You have participated in something absolutely huge, that words are so difficult, they're so small, that they can't convey. Even bouncing up and down and jumping around and going, ooh, 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 even those kind of sound expressions are too small. So, in your own way, I hope you take with you the gifts from the universe and the cosmos, and the gifts from the beloveds, and the Aquafarion, and the Aquari, and the Ansanstasia, and all the Christic beings who still love us enough to help us remember how to get to the best level of evolution we can from where we are, which is Christic evolution still. I hope you have a good time journeying from now, because you have the ability, you've got the access keys now, you've made it through, you've got the path. What you do with it is up to you. Be creative. Have a good time. If you're bored at your lunch hour at the office, go sit in a corner and say, I'm doing a dashi right now, leave me alone. Right? Yeah. Just bring up the flame. A little bit of itchy palm there. And yeah. And start going with it. You can imagine that once you have this foam around you activated, you have the little one here, and then you have a replica larger. Whenever you want to do a dashi, to go up to the temples, simply create a replica, right? Intend a replica of the big one, right? With the little tiny one in the center, but you don't have to worry about that. So it'll replicate both of them. But you take the replica and you just slide it up, right? And with it, an image of your body, dressed exactly as you are, as you sit. Or if you're laying down, you'll actually find it stands up. Right? Like if your body's laying down, you can do this, kind of bring it out as if you're coming up this way, as if out the top of your head, but it's bigger than your body, so it's not just out the top of your head. But if you're laying down, you still need to bring it up as if you were vertical. All right, you bring it up vertically to yourself. So if you're horizontal, you go horizontal with it, and it will right itself and put itself in its own direction. So it'll be like it'll stand you up, your Rashale body once you get out. But this is the beginning to be a glider slider, right? We have the slide vehicle developing now, which is the aqualene sun, and this is the closest image we've seen here at all that comes close to what the aqualene sun looks like and what your fields look like. Except they're radiant. It's not just a stationary solid object. It's more like a crystal membrane that radiates, and it's that's the closest we can get as far as a visual image here. You can ask to see it yourself. You know what. The basics of what it looks like, so you'll know it's like that one and not its neighbor. But ask to see it as clearly as possible, because when you see it, you'll start to know it, because it is a living flame. It is a part of your original family of consciousness that came from before you came through into the Rashale state or the Yukatarista state. So I'd just like to thank you for being with us through this activation. Thank you for contributing your prana exchange to the mission, because it is a mission at this point of Indigo Shield hosting what's the remnant of this planet at this time. And we really appreciate, we of the Christic councils from very many places. You notice that for those of you who don't know me, when funny accents come with this body, it's not that the one who lives here isn't there, it's that her higher level called Azara, and Azara is one of the Bendi trainers from Eartha, and she didn't know that either for a very long time. She was getting the hint that that must be where Azara is from, right? It is a part of the person who is known as Ashana here, but it is a part that lives there on Eartha, and there are many faces here who I recognize from where my spaces are. I can't come here too often because it strains this body, and that's why Ashana's here. And there are many of us, like the person sitting next to me, whom we do know you there too. No, I'm talking about the little man on my shoulder. No. Anyway, we will not tax any of our bodies any further, and we will say thank you for being with us. Happy Easter in your time here, and we hope you have a safe journey home. We are sorry for keeping you up late, but this is how it has to go sometimes. We do need to work with the frequencies in the way that they work best with the grids between Eartha and Earth. And we thank you for your patience and for you still coming and being with us. And for new people, welcome. I hope we didn't scare you away. I hope you enjoy being here. And hope to see you all soon. I think we are done. We are done. Are you done? Okay. That is the beginning of an activation. Just remember, there will be 2 more. There will be another set of 4, and then another set of 4 at Peru. And that Peru point, wherever you are on the planet, you don't have to be in Peru to participate. We will give a meditation that we put out on the internet for you, to if you want to link with us. You will be able to, so you'll get the activation immediately as it comes in from there. Yeah, so, well, thank you, and happy Easter, and good night. And thank you very much for being here.